You know what's funny? As we're growing up, we're taught to love and idolize superheroes for who they are and what they do for people whilst being undercover. They're humble and they always put others before themselves, even if it causes them to be in harm's way. But why don't we admire the real superheroes in the same way? Now, honestly, I feel like the person that we're going to talk to today is a real-life representative of our superheroes that are constantly going undercover, and for some reason, they tend to get a bad rep. We're going to be talking to a new friend of mine. Her name is Casey, and she's a social worker. I'm really excited for us to get to know her in this episode and get to know what she does for a living, because social workers, in my opinion, really save lives and don't get enough credit for it. Personally, I don't know a lot about the job, so I'm really excited to have a novice point of view and for the two of us to learn together while we talk to her in this episode today. So let's roll that intro music and get into it. You're tuning into URL versus IRL, hosted by Bree Lynch. Welcome to the podcast, you guys.
Hey.
I'm excited for you to be here, Casey.
I'm so stoked. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome.
Your intro was so sweet.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. We also have Ryan back on the podcast today, which is super exciting.
Just here, just hanging out.
Just hanging out. You know, what was so funny is I was so excited when you were over the house the other day, Ryan, because you and Casey were both here, and you guys got into this, like, long-form conversation without ever even speaking to each other, like, aside from, like, playing card games or whatever the hell we were doing. And I was like, Ryan's either going to come on this podcast. You're going to have to come with us.
No, I was excited when you said that Casey was like willing to actually do it, because you never know how people are going to react.
To be honest, Casey, you talked to me about coming on the podcast. You were I want to come on.
Because I listened to so many social work podcasts. I'm like, I ran out of them. I'm like, I want to hear like about different types of social workers. So I feel like it's a good thing to talk about. Yeah. And I like talking about my job. It's really fun.
That's so good. But I love that so much.
I've never done anything like this, and it's a new experience. So.
That's so exciting. And you're also a URL versus IRL active listener, too.
Yes, I do listen. I still have to catch up on the last like 2 episodes, because I've been listening to Green Day shamelessly because of the concert coming up. But no, I am an active listener, and I like the way that you guys dialogue, which is why I wanted to come on, because it's like a good representation of like what people are like really are.
Oh, that's so exciting. I love that so much. I'm really excited to get started with today's episode.
Yeah.
So you want to give us a little bit of a background? Like, how long have you been doing this?
Cool. So I am a social worker. I have been doing this for like the better part of like, what's this year? 2019, 5 years.
Okay. Yeah.
It's 2024. Wow. I got my first job right out of college. I studied.
Damn, good for you.
Yeah, I studied sociology and criminology in school. I honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. I went into college thinking like, okay, cool, I'm going to be Olivia Benson when I grow up. Like, SVU was my shit. But I was like, she's so like she's a queen. Like, she's an idol. Like, and she's badass.
100%.
Like, I want to do some badass shit like that. Like, she's saving the world.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what social work is until I got out of school and like was applying for jobs and like fell into child welfare.
Wow, that's wild. I can't believe you didn't even like go into like school knowing exactly what you're going to do. So I guess your degree was probably like a nice, well-rounded thing.
Yeah, so I took classes about a lot of stuff. Like, I took a lot of social problems courses, a lot of like social justice. I took a domestic violence course, which is like still really, really helpful today.
I didn't even realize you can take courses like that in college.
Yeah, I took a lot of family and gender studies courses. And then it was cool because it was criminology. So I got to take like a class on serial killers, organized crime, like it was a cool experience, but I definitely didn't study traditional social work in undergrad. Okay. So now I'm studying that in my master's program, where like I'm starting from scratch of like, this is social work as a science.
Holy shit.
My lame at, I just literally learned about the brain for 4 years.
What did you study?
Psych. Like, so, and I've been telling Casey that like I should have been soc. Because it's so much more interesting and so much more relevant to like helping people, because that's what I wanted to do when I was in college. I was like, I'm gonna help people, whatever that means. Yeah. But like they actually do it, and like psych people just like make a lot of inferences and like theory and all that other stuff. It's not as concrete or as like practical application based. So yeah.
You're gonna go back for your master's though, right, Ryan?
Yeah, only because my job's gonna pay for it. I'm not a crazy. I'm not trying to incur any more college debt, bro. Like, my job will pay for it. So yes, in what? No clue. But anyway.
But you could go back for that now.
We'll
Don't
see.
you think that they would kind of like intertwine?
I don't know. I just told Josh I think I'm just gonna save the world with him and do cybersecurity instead. So
That makes sense.
Hero.
Also, Josh is kind of an undercover hero today because he's producing this episode for us, but he's not on microphone, which is a very rare occurrence. I feel
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy.
We've been watching too much Jersey Shore, clearly.
I actually just restarted that from season 3, though.
Oh, did you really? Oh my God, stop.
Oh, yeah.
They're taking it off of Hulu. Yeah, girl, I just started watching Family Vacation and I have to blast through this shit because I have like 12 days left until the episodes expire.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but Ryan told me that Hulu is combining with what? Is it Disney Plus?
Well, yeah, Disney. In the short version, Disney owns Hulu, so like they're just merging all of it. So maybe it'll come with.
Maybe
it.
it'll come on there, but I feel like Jersey Shore is not Disney friendly.
No,
so
not
like,
Disney
there's no way
friendly.
they're gonna put that shit on there.
Oh,
That's
that
wild.
was iconic.
I know. So maybe we should like talk about your job a little bit.
My job? Yeah. So I started out working my very first job. So when I started looking for jobs out of college, I did a job shadowing at a juvenile detention center. And the county that I was living in, it was doubled as the youth shelter as well as a detention center.
Okay.
So I walked up in this bitch and was like... There's no difference between shelter and detention here. Like, y'all are all behind bars. And they were like, asked me how it was afterwards. I was like, this is literally just like a CO job. Like, and you're just warehousing kids, like, that don't have anywhere to go.
No.
Like, it was such a bad representation of like everything I didn't want to do. So I applied at the county child welfare office, and my first job, I was a case manager in a foster care unit. So all of my clients were teenagers in foster care. So that looked like I had to see them once every month. They were scattered. I had about 30 of them.
Whoa.
They were all throughout the state. I was their mom, their dad. I was their school counselor. I was their transportation. I was their coordinator. Like, it was everything. They were my besties. I love them.
That's awesome.
Like,
I love that.
But that was like the end of what the child welfare world is. Like, that's what is the end of the cycle. So I was kind of not understanding of like how these kids got in these situations. Just like, holy shit, there's these kids that everyone label as bad kids.
Yeah.
Like, all these kids were labeled just as bad kids. And it was like, wow, so much fucked up shit has happened to these kids. And like, how did we get to this point? So I left that job and then I went to a different county, and there I was doing intake. So that was investigations of allegations of child abuse and neglect.
Whoa.
So that's like the beginning of the life cycle of child welfare.
Sure.
All of my social work experiences in the child welfare realm.
Okay.
For like just to begin that. But so that's like anyone can call a hotline in and say like, hey, I think X, Y, and Z kid is being abused by X, Y, and Z person, and we got to go out and investigate it. So like that was where it was like, oh shit, like that was real.
So you can like literally take these kids from their homes.
So the first time I remember my first child removal, like, and it was in Delaware County. I was working in foster care. I was on call, and it was me, my pal Tall. Shout out Tall. She's my social work bestie. Me and her were thick as thieves. Like, we just rode in pairs because it was not the best area, and we were clearly sticking out like sore thumbs. We're on call. We get a phone call, and it was like the ongoing unit. They just got an order from a judge to remove 5 kids from their grandmom.
5?
5 of them.
In one house?
In one house.
Sheesh.
So we go out to this house, and we're trying to talk with this grandmom about, like, listen, how can we try and, like, resolve some of these issues? Like, is, like, her issue was, like, the condition of the home was, like, hazardous. Like, had twin babies, cribs had trash piled up in them. Like, kid couldn't sleep in them. Like, her substance use was out of control to the point where she was not supervising these children.
And this was grandma. This wasn't even mom.
That was just the information that I got off the bat. So I was pretty much given a court order and told, go remove these kids from this house.
Oh, shit.
This is in my 2nd month out of college.
Yikes.
No shit.
And I am 22 years old.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
And so we pull up on this block in Darby. Darby, Pennsylvania is really, really rough.
It is.
It's a very, very rough community. And we roll up in our county van that says CYS on the side of it.
What does CYS stand for?
Children and Youth Services.
Okay.
CYS, CPS, DHS, all the same thing. It's the child welfare entity.
Gotcha.
But, and we say, all right, like, we have to take these kids. Like, here's the court order. Like, this is where we'll be taking them. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there will be a court hearing in 3 days where you will be able to have a conversation with a judge and maybe resolve this situation. They say, okay, well, let us go in the house. Like, they knew it was coming. They were like, all right, let us prepare the kids, like, have a conversation with them, get their stuff together. Cool, fine, awesome. That works for me. We're out there waiting. It's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. We're knocking on the door every like 15 minutes. Like, hey, like, let's wrap this up. And it gets to the point where I'm like, yo, what's going on? I walk in the house. The kids weren't there.
No.
Was she there?
The mom, the grandmom, and the grandfather were there. The kids weren't fucking there.
So they had like an exit strategy.
Yeah,
like they knew you were coming.
They had an aunt come over and they brought the kids out the back door.
No way.
And then so we call. I am texting my supervisor, and she says, "Okay, I'm calling the police." I'm like, shit, this is gonna fucking escalate everything.
You're 2 months in, by the way.
We are two little white girls in the middle of the fucking hood.
Yeah.
And as the police start rolling up, everyone starts coming out of their house.
Of course, because everybody's nosy.
The whole fucking block is outside. And I see the kids, and the cop was like, yo, like, someone's going to jail if these kids don't get brought here in the next 5 minutes.
Oh, my God.
Shut the fuck
Like,
up.
we're not playing.
That's pretty hard.
He turned to me, and he said, Casey, once these kids get here, I need you to be in the car with the doors open. I'm putting them in the car, and you're driving off. And that was it. That's exactly how it happened. I drove them to it was like 10 o'clock at
Brother
night.
had been here before. He knew exactly what the situation
he knew
was.
exactly what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, yo, you're not cool to be here right now. Let's make this quick. And at that point in time, I was like, this is real fucking life. Like,
that's terrifying.
I was like, yo, I'm playing with people. Like, these are people's lives we're playing with. Like, I'm 22 years old at the time. Like, I'm playing judge, jury, and execution over someone's family. Like, that's horrible.
Now, like, I was going to ask you a question, but you may have already answered it or you may have not. I was going to ask, could you think of a moment that humbled you? Is that it? Or do you think that there's another moment on this job where you, like, were totally like, wow, like, this is for real?
There's several moments where I was like, holy shit, this is for real. Like moments that have impacted me the most.
Yeah, like something that where you're like, oh wait, I'm really doing this.
So there was a situation, and this is like one of the cases that has hit me the hardest. I was working in Bucks County at the time doing intake, so I was investigating a case. And the report came in. It was like kind of unclear what the allegations were. I think it was like substance use, lack of supervision was the issue. And I go out, I visit mom. Mom, to me, seems clearly unstable. She says that she's working overnight, leaving the kids at home overnight. And at that point in time, I was like, all right, that's cool. Like, let's find out someone to like come stay with these kids overnight.
Yeah,
but
sure.
the more I get talking to this mom, the more unstable she seems. And it was like allegations of this person's breaking in my house and like clearly like delusional thinking and like paranoid thinking. And I was like, something's off here.
Yeah.
Like something really is not sitting right with the way she's behaving. Like she was making allegations that people were coming into the house and trying to rape her kids, like that people were trying to fraud her from all these angles. People were trying to drug her. She had people spying on her. So I called my supervisor. I was like, hey, I need you to come out here. Like, you need to come out here and we need to know. Like, I need you to be the one to tell me if I need to call mobile crisis. Because they had that in Bucks County where you could call mobile crisis. They would come out to the house and they would either do like a quick assessment. Like, does this person need more immediate, like, mental health attention? Like, do we need to take them to the hospital? Do they need to be committed type of situation?
Man, that escalated quickly because like, to be honest, in these types of communities, a mom who is a single parent who may leave the kids alone overnight isn't actually the worst thing. Like, she's just trying to survive, and you can just come in and be like, hey, like, I know what you're trying to do, but like, can we just get someone to watch them? And then done, you're done. That's nothing. But then it escalated so quickly, it seems like.
But I'll have another story to follow up on that, because our system criminalizes the shit out of parents that are just trying their best.
That's where my brain went to, was is the parents who are trying to get, just trying to make it.
As this played out, my boss came out and she switched, and she like was completely with it, and like appeared totally coherent, able to string sentence together, wasn't tangential, like
what?
Completely different human. She switched in front of my supervisor. My supervisor was like, no, we can't call mobile crisis. What are they going to do? They're going to laugh at us.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'll come back next week.
Okay.
I'll schedule a visit next week. Monday rolls around. I get a text, kids aren't in school. Wednesday rolls around, kids still aren't in school. The school's calling me. They're saying, hey, grandmom's calling the school. They're worried. She's worried they haven't heard from the kids. And they haven't heard from mom. Something's wrong. So I get the police to go, like the school resource officer was like a police officer for the township.
Okay.
So I was like, yo, I need you to go over there. And he went over there and he was like, no one's answering the door. I called grandmom again. Someone's in that house. Like, she called me. She was losing her mind. Like, something's not right. So I get out there, and it's me. There's about like 10 other police officers. We're looking through the windows. We're knocking on the door. We determine we're able to see them. They're in the house. So at this point, we're like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
Like, she's not opening the door. She's talking to us through a window. She's got things boarded up. I could see the couch, like, moved into different positions. The house was trashed. No, I'm not letting you in. Nobody's coming in here. Someone's going to attack us. They're going to come get us. So it's escalating at this point, like severely escalating. I'm talking 12 police officers surrounding an apartment.
Shut the fuck up.
They're talking, do we need to get SWAT in? Because we couldn't see the kids. We could only see and communicate with mom. We couldn't see the kids.
But you could hear her.
We could hear mom.
Wow.
We'd see mom. Mom was passing notes through the window to me. She would only talk to me. She wouldn't talk to any of the police officers.
Because you were the only person she'd met.
Yeah,
right?
the only person she had met before.
Yeah.
So she was passing notes through the window to me, but she wouldn't let us see the kids.
Talk about a fucking mediator. Oh
Fucking
my God.
insane. They're talking about calling the SWAT team.
And this is still in your first
SWAT.
year on this
was
job.
In my then second year
Okay,
on the
but still.
job.
So you're 23 now?
Yeah.
Second year,
Yeah,
I'm there.
like,
I'm training somebody. I was training somebody. And I'm like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go get a 302 warrant. So I had to go down to the local hospital.
What's a 302 warrant?
302 warrant is a warrant that is filed, and it will involuntarily commit you into a psych ward.
She basically already was Olivia
72
Benson.
Yeah,
hour.
right.
So it's like a 72-hour hold.
Wow.
But you don't get out of it. Like, you can sign yourself into a psych ward.
Okay.
But that is like, the police are coming to get you and bring your ass into the psych ward. You don't get a choice in the matter.
So you can't say I want to leave, and if this
No, like, you go before a judge when you're 302.
okay. So I just want to clarify one thing. That is not a thing where we are from.
Oh,
like, you can't do that in New Jersey.
Oh.
I did not know that.
I learned this recently. I that's why I asked, because I learned this recently, because there's a situation in my family where someone was trying to do that for another family member. It's not a thing here.
Oh,
I did not know that.
And I was shocked to find out that it is a thing, because usually stuff like that, we have it and PA doesn't. But yeah, that's the one.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't apply for the whole tri-state area because we're all so close.
It doesn't even apply for most of the country, I think.
Laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was crazy. I learned that recently.
So in Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
you're allowed to 302 somebody, and the warrant will be approved if they're a harm, like an imminent harm to themselves or others.
Okay.
I want to clarify, though, like, I don't know that for a complete fact. But I'm pretty sure that is, like, you can't force anyone into psychiatric hospitals in New Jersey.
Wow.
Which I think is interesting.
Wow.
I want to look into that more.
Yeah.
Because I feel like...
I mean, it's relevant for you.
Yeah,
sure.
it would be really
Can you work in
relevant.
New Jersey? Do you have to have like a license in...
I don't have a license in New Jersey.
Okay. How does that work? It has to be like per state?
I don't have a license to practice at all. I'm still pursuing my MSW.
Okay.
So I could do like a case management job in New Jersey. I could do a case management job in Pennsylvania. It's all really social work. But until I have a license, I need to get licensed in that specific state.
Because those jobs just require bachelor's degrees.
Exactly.
In a relevant field. So like psychology or
Exactly.
sociology or something like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so that case was super wild. So I had to go get a 302 warrant. So you basically go down to the psych center in the hospital. You have to fill out all this paperwork. The police are still sitting on her house while I'm there. It's like a 2-hour process to get a 302 warrant on a good day. And so it's like hour 6 of dealing with this at that point. We go back to the house. We get the 302 warrant. And her family, I had called her family because I had some contacts for her siblings who had been making reports of like something's off. And so I called them. I was like, yo, can you guys please come here? Maybe you can get her to come out of the house with the kids. Like maybe if someone like, does anyone have an extra key? Like,
yeah, somebody help me here.
Someone like,
hour 6.
We don't want to make this fucking dangerous and we don't know if these kids are okay. And we don't want to come in here guns a-blazing and then someone get fucking hurt. Like, this can go shitty a million fucking ways. And so her brother was there, and her brother was talking to her through the window. And he's yelling at her. He goes, all right. Like, and he gets her talking. He climbs through the fucking window. He takes the screen off, climbs through the fucking window. He comes around and he opens the door for the police. I'm outside at this point. The police all go into the house and they're struggling. A struggle ensues in the doorway. And the uncle, who is this mom's brother, takes the handcuffs and handcuffs his sister. I said, I didn't know this was allowed. I didn't know you could do that. Like,
he probably fucking couldn't, but
like,
they were like,
the
whatever.
Cop looked at him and was like, help me, brother. Like, and he handed him the cuffs and was like, let me do this. Like, because they were going to like tackle her to the ground. Like, it was about to get ugly.
Yeah.
Like, and he was like, yo, like, let me just do this. But after all of that, they put her in the police car. They take her to the psych ward. She was in full-blown psychosis. Like, full-blown psychosis. We get into the house. The house is destroyed because now we have to interview the 3 boys that are in there.
Right.
3 boys are in there. They were in the laundry room. Mom had them cooped up in the laundry room.
The whole time.
The whole time. I was talking to them. They said that their mom had them in that house for 5 days.
5 days?
5 days. They hadn't had food.
What?
Mom had them under the impression that there was a war, that people were out to rape them, that people were out to get them. Mom told them that nobody could see them from the outside world. They couldn't even go take the trash out.
Shut the fuck up.
The scariest part about all of this was when I went through the house was destroyed.
Yeah.
And the bathtubs were full. So in my mind, I'm thinking she was going to fucking drown her kids.
Yeah, probably.
Like, there was just stagnant water, like, sitting in a bathtub.
Yeah, like, she was ready.
She was fucking ready to kill those kids. And there was a situation that happened similar to that a few years prior in Bucks County. So it really, like, raised a hair on the back of my neck. And in the days that had preceded, like, the children were safe. They disclosed no one was raping them. Mom keeps telling them this. Like, Mom is terrifying. Like, they were so afraid of Mom. She was acting erratic. So we get them situated with Grandmom, who, happy end of the story, has now adopted them.
Thank God.
So it ends well. But in the days that after that, I talked to her psychiatrist because she was on and off again with a psychiatrist. And she said, Casey, I want to make it perfectly clear with you that if you had not gotten there, based on what the police and you have told me, she would have killed those kids. And I said...
And her psychiatrist can't, like, report shit like that?
I said,
like,
oh...
Now,
that's how heavy this is. She was going to kill those kids.
Now, what? I mean, obviously, it was obvious from what you saw, but from what led the psychiatrist to believe that was going to happen?
The level of psychosis that she had and paranoia that she had, that someone was out to get them, that someone was hurting them, and the way that she had.
She
She
just saw
boarded them
that
up.
that's what it was going to lead
like
to.
it was doomsday in her brain is like what was essentially happening. Like this was her end game.
And like within her own, obviously she was in a psychotic break, but within her own logic, like might as well be my hand instead of
right.
But like living in a reality that doesn't exist.
She was totally out of touch with reality. And it was really scary because my thought was, holy shit, I was there the week prior.
Right.
Like I was there right before she would have started keeping these kids in the house. Did I make the wrong fucking call? Like that was what my brain was thinking about. Like, could I have made this, like prevented this from happening? And that is like just some of the shit that keeps you, like that's one of the cases that like kept me up. And,
debatably
like, made
though,
me leaving like child welfare, like that part of child welfare.
Debatably though, you were the reason why you like they were saved.
You're probably
eventually
the reason they're alive.
Because in the struggle, you were the only one she would even touch. So you were buying time and like all that, like just by showing up the week before. So I mean, I think that's probably
and the
the
kids
real
were
moral
familiar
to this.
with me. I mean, I visited with the kids like for like we had to go to court and everything like that. So like I had to like take these kids through the court process and like we had to get them situated in like a whole brand new situation with their grandmoms. Like spent a lot of time with these kids. So like me and the one other social worker, like we became their safe space. Like these kids felt comfortable with us and like it would that like hearing that they were adopted was like that's a moment that makes it all worth it because like that's a case that keeps me up at night but they're safe.
I feel like that's the part that people don't talk about though is the after, you know, like the news is like they've been saved but we don't find out what ends up happening to them. So it's great that is the ending, but like you don't, and the work though that you had to continue to put in after, like you all collectively went through this super traumatic event, and then you had to continue to go into work and continue to fight for these kids just to even get a new life, let alone keep the one, you know, get out of the one that they had.
Because the work doesn't stop there. I mean, you get them safe, and then you're like, okay, we need to have your basic needs met first. Right. And now we need to start the process of dealing with all of the shit that just happened to you. So now we're talking about we need therapy services, we need behavioral services, like we need IEPs in school, we need 504s in school, like, and these are all like terms of like educational, like special service planning for kids, but like, you're talking about ground one, like these kids now needing transportation to school. These kids don't even have clothes, like.
And on top of it all, where they live, the schools that they're going to already don't have resources.
So this was actually in a really good community.
Because you were in
I was in Bucks County at the time. It was in Newtown, so it was a very wealthy, well-off community. So the school at the time was really, really supportive.
I know the other case that you were talking about.
Wow.
You said there was another one. I know which one you're talking about.
Case.
Yeah.
That case rang in my head as soon as I walked
the
through
second
that
you
house.
said, I know,
Yeah, that was horrifying because that was like my friend actually was the one that had that case. Wow. And it was like something that we talked about really frequently. There was a case where a mom killed her 5 kids, like, and it was it was horrible.
Oh my God,
horrible. But like that's the shit that like intake CPS workers see every day. Like
that has to cause you like some sort of like, I don't mean to use the term like PTSD like loosely, but like that has to be traumatizing even for you. Like you never thought about like not doing this because it's so much stress that probably carries home with you.
Here's the fucked up part. I thrive in chaos.
Okay.
Like my time to shine is when shit is hitting the fan and things are going really bad and I can figure out putting the pieces back together. Like, I think that is because I personally grew up in a life of a lot of chaos.
Girl, what's your zodiac sign?
I'm a Cancer.
That's wild because so am I. I don't fucking thrive in chaos like that.
But put me up against a wall and shit's hitting the fan, like, and we'll figure it out. We'll get it done. Like,
okay, I mean, I guess.
But also, like, I lived in such a chaotic situation. My household, let's give you a clear idea. My household was a fucking episode of Shameless.
Okay, I was gonna ask if your childhood had anything to do with.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's fucking dig into that. Let's go.
Let's dig into it. Let me adjust myself.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. Tell us about your trauma.
Yeah, let's dig into the childhood trauma.
Well, it was chaotic. I mean, like, a literal episode of Shameless. So my parents got divorced when I was in 4th grade.
I'm sorry.
It happens. That was like the least traumatizing part of all of it.
Shit. Okay.
To say the least. But I mean, immediately after, not very long after, my mom got in a relationship with my stepdad. They're no longer together anymore, but he's still my stepdad. But we moved in together. I went from having one sibling to now being one of 5.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, and things quickly got real really fucking fast.
Okay.
My mom and my stepdad had a very, very abusive relationship. He was very, very abusive to her. It was fucking horrifying. On top of that, I was younger, but when my older siblings were in the 8th grade, they both started using. So it was like weekends back and forth between mom's and dad's house. Come back from dad's house, which sibling's gonna be in rehab this week? Kind of situation.
No fucking way.
I was the kid in school, like, to paint a better picture, that the parent, because where I lived was like a borough, like a more urban borough, and there was more suburban, like this kind of community outside of that. And my friends from outside of like the borough that I grew up in, like, I was the kid that you weren't allowed to go hang out with because I came from a bad family. You know, like, I was that kid that had the bad household.
Oh, that's fucked.
You know, like, it's fucked, but like, I was that kid. Like, I had the older siblings that were fucking up, like, had their own issues. Like, I lived in an urban part of town that people thought was not good, you know, and it was chaos.
Yeah.
So I think everyone has their why, and like, I had 2 teachers that were like really formative in like helping me when I felt like I had no help, because I felt very much alone when I was going through all that, because I had 2 younger brothers who had each other, and then my 2 older siblings who had each other. So then it was just kind of me.
Fuck.
And I was doing really well at the time. Like, I was a straight A fucking student. Like,
Thriving in chaos.
In fucking chaos.
Right.
Like, and I think that translates now so much as to why, like, turn the fucking chaos up and I'll shine. Like, we'll figure it the fuck out.
Because you had to.
I'm so hardwired to just be ready for shit to hit the fan. And I think it was from like the dynamic of the arguments, the substance use, like, it was so volatile, and I had to grow up really fucking fast. And the dichotomy of all of this is because all this crazy shit was happening. My mom and dad are both in the helping profession. So it's like, you wouldn't ever think like this would happen to our kind of family. But that just goes to show, like, it can happen to anybody.
What do your parents do?
So my mom is a nurse, and my dad was a police officer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, all right, I'm in this, like, not so great situation right now. But, like, I always felt like I want to do something more. Like, I need to help. Like, I saw my dad helping in some sort of level doing what he did. And it was like, I need to at least, like, have a voice, make a change, do something. So I think, like, my why for all of it is, like, definitely the younger me that, like, should have had a little bit more help. Like, and for the families like mine that didn't really have help. Because we were still middle class family, so we didn't really qualify for a lot of help that a lot of other lower income families have, but we still needed it. I mean, we weren't doing well by any stretch of the word, but I mean, it was hard. So I think that shaped it a lot. And I mean, now going forward, I think that like keeps me going, and I'm also like really big into the addiction space.
Okay.
My sibling, my older brother, I lost him to overdose in 2020.
Oh my God.
So that is
sorry.
why I'm like really, really heavy into like that field as well.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We remember him. I honor him every week by going to Outreach in Kensington.
Okay.
And doing harm reduction is my way of keeping him alive.
That's amazing.
So
Good for you.
that's what I do. But like, I think he's a big part of my why. I think my family is a big part of my why, and like giving other people voices to like be able to change things for themselves, because that's what we want to do as social workers is like, you're the professional of your own life, like let me empower you so that you can make your situation better.
Wow. Holy
So you always knew from the jump that kids were going to be your focus, because obviously there's social workers that work with all different types of people, but you knew from the jump it was definitely like the youths.
I knew it was kids.
Yeah.
I knew it was kids because I was like, I wish I would have had some help.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think in like a litany of like different areas, because also dumping into like trauma past issues, like it wasn't until I was a social worker that I was diagnosed bipolar.
Okay.
And autistic and ADHD. So I've got all of the neurodivergency covered.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
I wasn't diagnosed with any of that until I was already in social work. So
Oh,
like
shit.
I was like, it made me think like, how could the trajectory of my life have changed if I would have had access to these services?
Something.
Yeah.
To something.
To something
Like,
even. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so like, let me help get people the access they need before like it starts harming them in negative ways.
Also, I'm sure that if you had the help that you feel like you could have used when you were younger, it probably could have set you up for better success as an adult. Because somebody could have
Absolutely.
recognized that kind of thing for you earlier on, which would have helped you in your overall life adjust better.
Absolutely. And I can't hold any resentment to like anyone not picking up on any of the signs. Now that I think about it, I'm like, shit, the signs were there. Like, god damn, were the signs there. I never liked jeans because the buttons felt weird. Like, come on now.
I get you.
That's amazing.
I get you, yeah.
I'm not autistic though.
Yeah.
And but like my family was in such a position where like shit was so crazy they couldn't have seen the signs.
Right.
Like
Because they were looking at all the other chaos. There's too
but
much
I
else
was
going on.
doing well. Like
Yeah.
I was
Right.
in sports, I was getting good grades. Like, and by the grace of God, sports is probably the one thing that saved me from being on a shittier path than what I am.
Sure.
Like that is the one thing that helped me.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the one thing about neurodivergency, though, when we were growing up, like it was perceived as like a barrier. But like I know so many people who like
It
are
also
on all
seemed
levels
like-
of the spectrum that like are so successful in different things. You know,
Well,
what
I
mean?
was gonna
It
say,
doesn't
yeah.
mean struggle. It just means that like certain things, you know, whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like for so many of us, it was kind of looked at as like a negative thing and like something
sure.
that's just going to harm you and hurt you. But like realistically, like some people that are on the spectrum excel in some areas because you're so like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
hyper fixated and so hyper focused.
We
on
also
one
haven't
thing.
even been talking about it that long. Did you know like the first person diagnosed with autism like just died last year?
What?
Yeah, dude, he was in his 80s.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's new.
Yeah, it's new. That's
and
what I'm saying.
It's still developing. They
Right.
just started calling it autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah, and they started integrating classrooms, like bringing in aides instead of, because like when we grew up in school, like there was always there like any developmental disability students were always in a separate classroom, and
Yes.
and then good research and time put in made it realize like, oh wait, separating these students from the rest of the student body is not effective for them to assimilate into the world and become productive members of society that they can absolutely be.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think the biggest like part of it is like there's nothing necessarily wrong with them. It's like maybe there's
No.
just some maladaptive coping mechanisms that
Yeah.
have developed. Like that's largely what it is for me is like I have maladaptive coping skills and I get dysregulated very easily. Like and you just with neurodivergency you just learn to adapt your life to make it easier for you. Like
Yeah.
everything can be adapted in some way, shape, or form. Like, fuck, that's why we had the ADA. Like,
But I think that's why it was such a struggle when we were growing up, because our society always wants everything to be very, not to like go too big with it, but like we like things uniform. And essentially, if you're neurodivergent, you need things that are quite literally not uniform to like the way that the masses are doing it. So that created like a conflict where people didn't want to make that adjustment or whatever.
Right.
But now I'm really glad that we're in a place like straight up. I have a coworker who told me that her friend was also like she also did all the testing, the battery of testing to figure out that she's on the spectrum. And it was like she called her and was like, "Yay, I'm on the," because she knows now, like you said, how to make her life easier. Like now, like 15 years ago, people would have been like, "Oh my God, you're autistic." Like it would have been like
Yeah.
this big negative, like doomsday kind of thing. Now it's like, great. Now we know how you need your life to be laid out so that
Right.
we can give
Yeah.
you the best experience possible.
Yeah,
And I think that's
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
where people are celebrating things like that instead of being like Yikes.
Yeah, very true.
So I want to take it a step further, and I want to know what Ryan thinks about this. So what are your thoughts about, because what I see now is I'm starting to see a trend of so many children and people being diagnosed with ADHD, bipolar, ODD.
All the Ds,
all the Ds.
Yeah.
Like, and what's interesting is, like, I'm seeing most of the kids that come across my caseload now have an IEP or have a 504, which is an individualized education plan, which is usually for learning disabilities, emotional dysregulation, behavioral health.
Yeah, like any accommodations that students need for their educational experience.
And I'm seeing so many, I'm like, do these kids need IEPs? Are we over-diagnosing these things? Or are we just not, like, doing the best that we can by these kids as far as, like, having them have a routine, having them have structure, having them have discipline, like letting them express themselves, letting them learn, like letting them be who they are, like, or are we all just labeling them and giving them IEPs?
Yeah, I wish.
And it's funny because, like, I even see it now with, like, women that are our age with, like, borderline personality and bipolar. Like, I see it on TikTok all the time, like, of people, like, self-diagnosing themselves of, like,
that's a big problem.
That's like an epidemic in itself, is people self-diagnosing these days, because there's so much information out there, but you still have to be the person who can interpret that information correctly.
And like, what I've learned is, like, diagnostics all come down to insurance.
Right.
Like, you need to have a diagnosis to put down. So, like, are we really just labeling all of these kids, like, as having these learning disabilities and these behavioral disorders that are going to follow them all throughout their lives? Or could we just accommodate them in some sort of way so they're not as dysregulated?
Yeah, I think the need to label is, once again, something that we do in all of society.
Right.
But, and also, like, there's so many factors. I do think that there are more kids that are correctly diagnosed than there have ever been, but I could also argue that there's a bunch that aren't as well, because there are so many factors. So, like, a factor for all of the accurate diagnoses is probably due to, like, the way that we expose kids to the world now. Like, we shove an iPad in their face at, like, 2 years old, and I think that can create, like, a lot of, like, sensory stuff and like and also, like, attention span stuff that could create, like, all of the ADDs, ADHD things that we're talking about. But like you said, then also, the medical industry, unfortunately, is a business first in this country.
Yeah.
And you need a diagnosis for the insurance companies to process your claim. So even as simple as, like, and granted, this wasn't a big deal, but, like, when I first started therapy, we didn't really know, like, what was going on with me yet. But after the first session, so that my insurance could clear through, my therapist was like, we'll just put it as, like, generalized anxiety.
Right.
And she said, we'll keep delving and we can always change it, but, like, just so that and that's a good version of doing it. But I can't imagine, like, the factory style, like, let's just give every kid under the age of 10 one of these, disorders, so that we can get them in the system, we can get more meds, pumped out into the. It's unfortunate that I wish I had a better answer, but I think it's all the above. Like, I think there are more kids, unfortunately, because we know about these things getting accurately diagnosed, but I think there's also a bunch that may, just like you said, just need more accommodations rather than medication and diagnoses.
And I think it's interesting what you mentioned about, like, the tablets and, like, the electronics, because, like, we're truly now seeing the effects of, like, the first generation of tablet kids.
Yeah, man.
Like, they're now starting to be, like, middle school, high school kids, and, like, you're seeing, like, I read it somewhere, like, the literacy rates of these kids is, like, extremely low.
It's bad. Like, these kids, like, the literacy rates are really bad. Also, like, we're going to get exposed to a whole new generation soon. 2025 is the last group of Gen Alpha babies. And then and then we start Gen Beta after that. So, like, now Gen Alpha, like, Gen Z is going to get into their late 20s, and we're going to see what Alpha's got. Like, if we thought Gen Z was weird, it's going to get even weirder, I think. Just because they're, like, so online, it's ridiculous.
Wow.
Like,
and
I
the
think
new
that's also a factor.
Scare me, but I also think
you're going to be working with them.
And I work with them, and these kids scare me.
She's already working with them.
Like, these kids, like, and of course, like, I get a lot of referrals. Like, one of the biggest referrals I get is truancy. I have to deal with truancy all of the time.
Can you explain what that is?
Truancy is not going to school. So most states in our country have a law where students under 18 are compulsory school age, so they are required to go to school. In the state of Pennsylvania, any unexcused attendance over 3 days is considered truant. So chronic truancy. So truancy will lead you right into the child welfare system. So the first step, if you are truant, is they send a letter home to mom and dad. They bring you in. They have this student attendance improvement meeting. They try to get improvement into the attendance. If that doesn't happen, they may make a referral to CYS. And they may say, okay, we're going to make a referral to CYS, and they're going to maybe put a program in to address the truancy because they consider it child neglect. Per the law, it is child neglect for children not to go to school, to not be taking your kids to school. So parents that may not have transportation to get their kids to school, parents that may work crazy hours and need their kids to stay at home and take care of the other kids. Their parents then get taken to court, get fined because their kid's missing school.
And they don't have the money to challenge in court why.
Like, you don't have the money as is, and you're being brought to court. You can't afford an attorney. And they're saying, now we're going to fine you because you didn't get your kids to school.
Holy shit.
And if the attendance continues to get worse, we're going to put your kid on juvenile probation if they're old enough to be put on juvenile probation. And in some cases, I've seen kids removed from their parents because of truancy.
Holy shit.
And by the way, that just shows the prison pipeline that they want to feed, because in this country, so many prisons are privatized organizations and companies. And how do they make money? By putting people in jail. And I just want to compare. You were talking about Pennsylvania. You said 3 days is truancy. In New Jersey, it's 10. And it just shows, though, how different each state runs their thing.
Yeah.
But think about it. What does Pennsylvania have that New Jersey doesn't? One of the most impoverished cities in the country.
Right.
So they're using Philadelphia to fuel the prison system of the state.
And one of the biggest points, if I can make any in this podcast, is how closely linked the child welfare system is to the carceral system and the prison industrial complex.
Okay.
I believe that they go hand in fucking hand.
Go off.
Can you elaborate
and that is
on that?
one of the ugliest truths that I've realized working in child welfare.
Fucking go off.
I realized that a lot of the laws and statutes that determine what is child abuse and child neglect is criminalizing people that are poor. So, and though there is such a disparity in the rate that minorities are investigated, reported to CPS, the rates that they are placed in foster care, minorities have far higher rates of being in foster care longer, experiencing worse outcomes after foster care. I mean, the research goes back to the creation of the foster care system. I mean, these laws were not designed to help people. And the child welfare system is largely got its roots around the same time as the war on drugs and the crack era started.
Holy shit.
So, I mean, there's this author, her name's Dorothy Roberts, and she is a professor at Penn, and she writes a lot of fabulous work about this. But she makes a lot of ties to back to Jim Crow and how that is still there's still effects of that in every aspect of our child welfare system. It's a very fucked up system. And you see it, I could be in Bucks County and guarantee I'm investigating more black families than I am white, and it's a predominantly white county. It's the rates that people are reported, it's so the disparity is huge.
How do you think that you could help that? If you could solve that problem, what would you do to change that?
How much time you got, buddy?
I know, right?
Oh boy. Where I would start? So I really like policy. What I've loved about my master's program is getting to learn more about policy in general and social policy, because it's got so much of a political, there's so much political agenda behind it. I would start with mandated reporting laws.
Okay.
Because anybody that comes into contact with children is a mandated reporter. So, and their trainings are, if you see something, suspect something, say something.
Okay.
But how many times does bias and implicit bias play a role in someone making a report? I mean, the biggest people that make reports are teachers and medical professionals.
Okay.
They are the largest portion of mandated reporters that we have.
People who are trained
nation.
by nature to already stick up for people. Right. That's all. That's it.
But their standard, the amount of times that I've seen teachers report kids for being dirty, and now you have child welfare in your life, and what's your standard of dirty? Maybe that's different than their standard. So it's so subjective, and they think, well, this parent might have said something to me that suggested this, so I made a report, and it's not that, you know, like so many times teachers and medical professionals will get a bad idea, a bad taste of a family, and they'll start to be suspicious. Oh, well, they must not be taken care of well. And so we'll just call a report in. And there's teachers that'll report the same. I've had teachers report the same family 5, 6, 7 times.
And they don't realize the weight of what they're doing.
The weight of what they're like, and that's the thing.
Life.
The weight of one call to the child abuse report line can change the trajectory of a child's entire life. It can change everything.
And it doesn't affect that teacher or doctor, whoever, like you mentioned, at all. Doesn't change their lives at all.
Yeah, they're not even thinking about it.
And it's up to a social worker, and that's granted, hopefully you have a good investigator that gives a fuck, but you could have a bad social worker that doesn't want to really do the job to the best of their ability and will listen to a teacher over what a parent's saying to them. And sometimes parents really get like falsely like wrapped up into the system, and we're like, yo, like, this shit never should have went down like this. Like, no one listened to me. And I think it's a real injustice to families that way that the mandated reporting system, that like the weight that it has. I think it's the sheer weight that it has, the power that mandated reporters have, and the training of mandated reporters, because everyone takes the same training, and it says if you see something, say something, this is what child abuse is. And then everyone gets so worried, well, what if I don't report something and it ends up being something bad, which I'm sure that happens too. But the amount of times that I've gotten a report of someone thinking that something bad is happening to a kid, and I go out and I find out, well, that teacher has a beef with this parent.
Of course. Yeah.
The amount of mandated reporters that I've seen make reports maliciously for their own personal life is even crazier. But anyone can make a report. And I think the fact that anyone can make a report is an issue, because I also see, like, there's times I'll walk into a house and it's like, oh, I know why you're here. My baby dad called. He's pissed because I kicked him out last week. You know what I mean? Like, and like, it's domestic situations where they're calling back and forth on each other, and now you're just stuck in the system.
So if it were up to you, how do you fix that? Like, how do you start to fix that, I should say?
I would redo all of the training for mandated reporting is where I would start.
And essentially that training maybe would just have more, because the way you're describing it, like you said, if you see something, say something, like essentially tear all of that down and try to give people the skills to be a little bit more intuitive,
more discerning. Like, I think, like, because my thing is if you are in a position where you're, say, a school counselor, you're a teacher, you're a police officer, and you're observing something that you think is wrong, why didn't you step in and fucking do something?
Right. Instead, you're filing a report when you could have just literally,
what did you try to do first and before calling us? Like, and sometimes I think mandated reporters think we're the end all be all. Like, everything goes to child welfare.
Right.
When in doubt, just call it into CYS and they'll take care of it.
Right.
When, like, I don't have time to worry about this domestic squabble that you overheard this student talking about.
Right.
There's kids that are actually really in danger.
Yeah.
You know?
Which are like probably more so the kids that you're working with now, right? Because you said that you transitioned from.
So I transitioned now. So what I'm doing now is along the lines of prevention.
Okay.
So my agency is a nonprofit agency, and we are contracted by DHS. So the city's child and welfare agency contracts and pays for our program. That's where we get all of our referrals from. Our goal is to prevent these families and divert them away from the DHS system and the child welfare system.
Oh, shit.
So
Okay.
instead of them getting trudged down into the oversight of DHS, we're going to just provide you with the resources that you need to alleviate the issue so no one has a reason to fucking call DHS.
Go off. Okay,
Is
that's
what
sick.
we're doing now.
Preventative.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you went literally from one to the complete opposite
It's
end.
the complete opposite end. So, like, I'm
Wow.
not dealing, and it's nice because right now I don't deal with anything that's safety or risk assessment related.
Okay.
So, like, the lives of children is no longer on my shoulders.
That's probably a lot
Which is
easier for you to sleep at night.
It's easier for me to sleep at night for sure. Because it's not like I'm the one person that needs to be called when shit hits the fan. There's a few other people that can be called before me.
Sure.
And it's all low risk. Like, it's people that need housing support, people that need connection to mental health supports, people that need connection to school supports, like just basic resources to keep people like out of the system. Because that's the basic things that you get called into the child welfare system for: substance use, your mental health being unstable, not having proper housing, your kid not being in school. Like, all those things can be a CPS report. So our goal is to keep you as far away from that as possible by just giving you the resource.
Wow. That probably makes you feel a lot better than what you were doing before. Or do you not think so?
It's funny. I was actually thinking about it today. I like what I do. I miss being in the thick of the chaos sometimes.
Okay.
Like, when I was working in investigations, and I think this is also a like, maybe not the best part of it. Like, there's a certain level of power that comes with working for child welfare. Because, like, I can go into a courtroom and ask a judge for a warrant, and I can do whatever I want with that.
That's
you know what I
badass.
mean? Like, I can call the police officers and say, yo, let me into your interrogation room. I need to question this person.
Wow.
Like,
Damn.
I was allowed in the jails. I was allowed in the hospitals, like, without questions asked. Like, the access that I had to get the answers that I needed, it gives you a power rush.
Yeah.
Like, and it's unhealthy because you have to keep in check. These are people. Like, these are people's lives.
Yeah, it's not a game.
And these are some of people's worst times in their lives. Like, and I thought it was very unhealthy that I got, like, a thrill, an excitement out of shit hitting the fan.
Okay.
Because I was like, this is like the real work. Like, so now I have cases where, like, it's not safety, it's not risk, it's not chaos, things burning down in flames. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this is a little boring, but it's still doing the work because it's not getting to the point where I needed to be involved last time.
Okay.
I'm preventing you from even getting to that point of trauma.
Did you feel like what you were doing before was affecting your mental health in a negative way? Like, I'm sure that it was probably, like, emotionally, like, what is the word I'm looking for?
Draining.
Suffocating. Like, it was probably, like, emotionally suffocating.
It was suffocating. It was the only thing. Like, if you knew me when I was working in investigations, work was the only thing I talked about.
Right, and I was going to say, you
that was
probably bring
it.
that home with you.
Every day. I would be on the phone. I would answer my phone, have my phone waiting for people to call me.
Oh, my God.
All times a day. I was
And then,
accessible all of the time.
So you didn't have do you feel like you had an unhealthy boundary of being able to separate work from life?
100%.
Did you have anything that you would do to try to, like, make sure that your cup was filled before you were constantly filling other people's cups? Because I feel like you could probably fall into, like, a people-pleasing kind of tendency with
absolutely.
that. Which is also exhausting, I'm sure.
I feel guilty when I can't answer the phone for my clients, or, like, I can't get them back, or, like, I can't see them in time. So, like, I am a people pleaser. Now I'm getting better with setting my boundaries of, like, after 5 o'clock, you can't get a hold of me. Like, I'm texting clients back on the weekend now. I'll get back to you on Monday. I'm not ignoring you. It's the weekend. Like, because it was so exhausting. I burnt out. Like I had to take a leave of absence from work for a while. Like
wow.
that was like around the same time where I was diagnosed with bipolar. So like my mental health I was not medicated while I was in investigations. So like, and I was not dealing with my own trauma. It was still very fresh that my brother had passed, like hadn't processed grief. Like it was all bleeding together.
Wow.
So I ended up taking a leave of absence, and then I went into an IOP program.
Oh, wow.
And was like, yo, I need to get my mind on track because, like, I can't help people if I'm not okay. And, like, I wasn't okay. I was spiraling.
How long do you feel like it took you to feel like you were back on track enough to be able to jump back into work?
So I took, like, a year hiatus from social work.
Wow.
Yeah. I worked at an ophthalmology office. I worked at a bar, and I worked in an HR office.
You missed it, I'm sure.
I missed the shit out of it. Oh my God. I was clawing at the bit to like just be amongst people again.
That's good that you took that time for yourself to be able to focus on yourself before you jumped back into focusing on other people, though.
I had to.
Was there ever a point during that year where you thought you might not go back? Or did you always know? Like,
I was actually going to ask that question earlier. Is there anything that's made you like, fuck, I can't do this anymore?
I don't think, no, not like I can't do this. It's just like, do I have the stamina to like do this forever?
So basically, that your hiatus of you doing these odd jobs was your Rocky montage to get back into the saddle of social work.
I always knew that I wanted to get back into it. I was like, all right, let me get on track. Let me get my mind right. Like, I want to go to school. I need to get through school so I can get the social work job that I want. Like, this is the end goal. I was like, I just need to learn how to manage my fucking brain. Like,
was there any like, was it hard for you to get back into it, or was it like easy enough for you to just be like, okay, I'm back?
It was like riding a bike.
Okay.
I think because...
Is that when you made the transition or no? Like from doing the thing with the child? Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, so this, like, the job that I'm in now is, like, my first job back into.
Nice.
So, like, I had a year to reflect on, like, what the child welfare system was, like.
Okay.
And for a while, I was kind of like, fuck the child welfare system. Like, this shit is really fucking... Like, there's a lot of harmful aspects of it. There is.
Yeah.
But, I like being involved in child welfare in some aspect, and this aspect feels right. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't feel as dirty, I would say.
Okay.
Like, part of working for the government feels dirty.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, the logistics of, I guess, becoming a social worker. Like, what kind of, like, is there, like, clearances and shit, and like it's a government thing,
social workers are everywhere. Right. Social workers are in hospitals, schools, prisons.
Okay, thank you. Because that's another thing is I think when people think of like social workers, they immediately think of
baby snatchers.
Correct. Thank you.
No.
Let's expand on that.
Usually baby snatchers or caseworkers.
Yeah. No. Social workers are everywhere. Social workers are in addiction. You can be a social worker and be a therapist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Social workers are in the housing system and domestic violence and therapy.
That's why in the intro of this episode I was saying that you guys are like superheroes because you guys are really helping people, but unfortunately I think the immediate thing that people think of on like the internet and in the media, hello, URL versus IRL.
Hello.
Yeah, immediately what people think of is people snatching people's kids.
Absolutely.
And taking them away from them for the rest of their life, and then the kids end up in foster care and then they're fucked because of it, which is not always...
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. That's the ugly side of child welfare.
Right.
But child welfare is such a small sector of what social work is.
Go off. Okay.
Like, I don't like staying just in child welfare. I also like the addiction sphere, which is
where you're
totally
at now, right?
different. Like harm reduction and addiction is totally different than child welfare. Yeah, sure, they all overlap in some way, but it has different principles. It has different, like, you're not going to see a harm reduction framework in child welfare, but it's still social work.
Right.
You know, and I mean, you'll see social workers. You can go into any like politician's office and I can guarantee you'll have a social worker there. I mean, they can be in everything. Most of our legislators their research is done by social workers.
Wow.
Because they're on the ground with these people. So like, the thought, usually you would think is like, oh, we're going to bring in a psychologist, or they don't know anything about anything because they're not, these psychologists come from third party companies. But like, if you have a social worker, they're literally knee deep in all of the shit and they know what's going on in these communities. So yeah, that's like you said, like politicians are more apt, and other organizations are more apt to use these social workers because they have their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, and like even like up to like white collar like big businesses, like there's social workers that are brought in to do like consults with like DEI initiatives. Like you'll always have a social worker brought in for all of that. Like some of my professors do that, where like they'll freelance for companies and come in and they'll basically like help their company culture, because like social work is just like the way everyone interacts with the systems that are in place. So like if you can affect this system, like it'll help the people. Is like that's what social workers are really trying to do.
Yeah. Okay, so you said that you do a weekly preventative program, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I volunteer for Operation in My Backyard.
Okay.
Shout out them.
Okay.
They are a grassroots harm reduction agency in Kensington, and I believe they're operating in Southwest Philly as well sometimes.
Okay.
What we do is we go out, we give food out in Kensington, we cook food, clothes, and we give harm reduction supplies. So sterile injection, sterile needles, fentanyl test strips, Narcan, wound care, like the whole litany of services for addiction. We don't provide like the addiction like rehab services, nothing like that, but it's like more on the ground, like basic needs to keep you alive and well while you are using.
Okay.
So like the whole premise of harm reduction is not like, let's tell people stop doing drugs. We know people are going to do drugs.
Yeah, realistically. Like,
Realistically,
it's probably
people
a
are going to do
fucking hard
drugs.
habit to break.
And
Yeah.
it's not my place to tell you not to do drugs.
Okay.
Right.
What I can do is I can help keep you alive while you do them.
Oh, wow.
I can make it safer for you to do drugs and not die.
Okay.
So
And then you would hope that they hit their rock bottom and then decide on their own
Right.
to then get into treatment or do whatever they need to do.
But I'm sure if they decided that they wanted to stop using, you're also there to help them.
absolutely,
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're a fucking social worker, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But you can
it's
only do so much.
recognizing that like everyone is the professional of their own life, and some people just might want to use drugs, and that has to be okay. Like we can't tell people what they can and can't be putting in their bodies.
Right.
So while I can make it safe for you to do those things,
Yeah.
because like when it's funny because people think of harm reduction and drugs and it's like a trigger word, like,
Yeah.
oh, we don't want to talk about that, like that's enabling people. But like we think about when you go out drinking, for those that drink, you get a DD, you're not going to drive home drunk. That's harm reduction.
Yeah.
You put a seatbelt on when you get in the car. That's harm reduction.
It's all about the way we stigmatize doing drugs versus alcohol,
Right.
because one is legal, but laws are just things that we made up. So it's like,
And they change over time, too.
and they literally change. Alcohol
Yeah.
was illegal at one point in this country's history.
so
and
was
then,
weed. Which
right.
was, yeah.
Well,
considered
and
drug,
weed was
yeah.
only criminalized in this country for a reason that had nothing to do with keeping people safe. And also just the basic thought, right? Why, like, we get all upset because like, oh, these hard drugs, whether it's using needles or, crack or whatever, like, oh, it's so terrible for your body. If you heavily drink alcohol for 15,
fucking terrible
20
for
years,
you.
you're literally going to destroy
You're
your
gonna
liver.
die.
What's the difference?
Right, yeah.
And one just takes a little bit longer. So we say it's okay.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really crappy situation, and I think that the current situation in Philadelphia is,
Especially
like,
Kensington.
in Kensington specifically, is like in dire straits. The new mayor is very much against harm reduction. I think she sees that as a trigger word, but like her whole idea is let's crack down on Kensington, and her stance on that is rehab or jail. And social science has told us many, many times that that's not necessarily the answer. We know that like recovery isn't a linear process, and
Right.
recovery doesn't look the same for everybody. Some person can get clean and never go to rehab a day in their life.
And people
and
have
be
to
fine.
choose. I think the big part too is that people have to choose, and essentially with that kind of mentality, this or this, you're not giving them any choice. I mean, you're giving them basically just two choices.
Well, when you tell people what to do, it literally it causes friction and
Right.
restriction from
Yeah.
them. You know what I mean? Like, people don't want to
Absolutely.
listen to what they have to do because you're telling them what to fucking do. Nobody wants to listen to that. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And I think one of like her strategy is let's put more police in Kensington, which is like fucking yawn.
Literally,
like
all you're doing is getting people off of the street, but not in a good way, because you're just putting them in an even more harmful environment. Probably.
They're relocating different streets. You're not on Kensington Avenue anymore, but you're on the surrounding blocks. So like you're just moving the people elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the bottom line is there's not enough beds in rehabs in Philadelphia to house even a quarter of the people that are on Kensington Avenue.
Oh shit.
There's not enough beds. There's not enough capacities. There's not even enough shelter space for a fraction of those people that are living on the streets there.
But the funny part with Philadelphia is that there's not enough available beds.
Right.
But there are enough empty housing units, tenant, whatever, in the city of Philadelphia to house all of the homeless people there. And instead of using city money, state money to put into these places, pay these landlords to house these people that are, not housed at the moment. They grandstand by, instead by just putting cops everywhere and push, like Casey said, just pushing them into different areas instead of, hey, why don't we use all of this federal and state money that we have and invest into these, places and house these people temporarily. But that would make too much sense.
So Camden had a program. They participated in the Housing First program for a while. I think they still do, actually. And the whole idea of that program was we're going to take people from street homelessness, and instead of having them go through the shelter system and do that whole song and dance, we're going to place them immediately into permanent stable housing.
Okay.
And I believe the way they had it worked out was with the Public Housing Authority,
right.
And it worked. It was
so why isn't everybody doing that?
Because you have to believe, funding is definitely a part of it, but you also have to have people who believe that that's the right thing.
Right, exactly. And when you have a city like Philadelphia and their Office of Homeless Services overspends their budget by $15 million and is investigated for it, I mean, they could be allocating that money to, redevelop some of these housing units into affordable housing, into PHA, like Public Housing Authority housing.
Or just simply paying these landlords that have this empty space and just be like, hey, just house these people. Here's money.
Right.
Section 8 program.
Yeah. A better Section 8 program.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn.
But you have to want to do it. And that's the problem. So when you ask why, it's because they don't want to. Simply. It's unfortunate, but that's what it is. And the people who do want to don't have the money to do it.
Right.
That's fucked.
Yeah, there's not a lot of money to go around for the things that are needed to keep people healthy and safe and stable. And I fear it's only going to get worse. But I mean, we do our best. So I mean, at Outreach, we try to give people the basic needs and keep them safe while they are out on the street. And some of those people have homes that they go back to. Not everyone's living on the street. And I think that's also a big stereotype is I hate when people see a homeless person, it's oh, they must be on drugs.
Yeah.
I hate that. Immediate ick if I hear you say that.
Yeah, what basis do you have?
Or I'm not going to give that person $1 because they might go spend it on drugs.
Do you know how expensive drugs are, my guy?
Bitch, what? Do you know how hard they have to hustle to get a bag of dope?
Yeah.
That little dollar ain't doing nothing.
Right,
Oh, yeah, they're going to use that shit to get a snack.
Fucking water, maybe. Yeah.
Actual water. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. And that's the thing. People have this idea that all homeless people are on drugs and they're all choosing to be there. You ask anyone in Kensington if they want to be there, they're going to tell you fuck no. They actually are stuck. People get stuck there because the way that
the system
and the way that those drugs interact with your brain, you need it after that. You need that to stay well and functioning.
Right.
Or else you're not going, you're going to be feeling like you're dying. So, it keeps you in that cycle of, all right, I got to get up in the morning. I got to figure out how I'm going to hustle to make this money so I can get this bag of dope, so I can do my morning bag. And now I'm going to be knotted out for X, Y, and Z hours. And I'm going to wake up. I'm going to need to hustle some more. It's a constant cycle. They're not thinking, shit, maybe I should save some money to get myself a house. They're not thinking about a fucking house. they're thinking about how am I going to get this drug so I don't feel like I'm dying.
Also, the way that we treat homeless people, if you see someone who is clearly homeless or almost, or very poor, and you go, you know what, I'm going to give them money. That's a choice that you can make without having to know what they're going to use it for.
Exactly.
Like it's so in our heads, like, well, I'm not going to give it to them because they're going to use drugs. Like, okay, cool. You're like, your soapbox sucks right now.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
because basically what you're saying is I only want to give things to people if I know that they're going to do something that I agree with, which means you're not really coming from a good place.
Right.
You're just coming from a place like, I want to do this so that I feel good. And because if they're doing something that you don't approve of, it doesn't make you feel good. Now you don't want to give. That's self-serving.
You're giving for the wrong reason.
That's self-serving.
That's kind of similar to like the notion that people have with food stamps. Like I see some people say, like if someone's using food stamps to get themselves, say, like steak for dinner, well, why are you allowed to use food stamps on steak?
People say shit like that?
Yeah,
Okay,
or
so I can-
Shut the fuck
Do
up.
people not deserve to eat nice food?
So so I can. There's a few different things that I've dealt with in my jobs.
Okay.
So I've worked at a supermarket for 11 years as a part-time job, and obviously we deal with people with food stamps because where are they going first? The grocery store.
Okay.
And I have coworkers, and the funny part is they're just turning us all against each other, right? So people who are basically at a low enough income to have food stamps are only like a half step above or below a lot of my coworkers who are the working poor. But what they're doing, though, is that they're pitting us all against each other, right? So my coworker, who's the working poor, goes, can you believe this asshole just came in and tried to use food stamps? Like, we have hot prepared foods, like hot fried chicken and grilled chicken and potatoes and all this other stuff. And you're not allowed to use food stamps to buy that stuff. You can only...
Which is like, why?
What?
Well, think about it. And I would say this to them, like, well, think about it. Shouldn't that be what the food stamps are for? Because if you're low income... Maybe you're in a studio apartment and you have a slumlord landlord that won't fix your oven. And the only way that you can give your kids hot food is if you get this 8-piece fried chicken from the Acme and give it to you. But you know what I'm saying?
Acme, we were talking about that earlier.
But not the Acme, but seriously though, and my coworkers would be like, "Oh, can you believe this?" Like they know that they're not supposed to get prepared foods. Or I used to work in the seafood department, right? And this goes into what you said about having nice things. They would, a customer would come in and then we have steamers, so you can get like 3 pounds of crab legs and we can season and steam it for you.
Yeah.
That's feeding you and your kids, and you'll probably have a little bit more
What if you
for
can't
tomorrow.
fucking cook? Like me.
Well, I mean, there's that. I mean, but even for them though, like they don't even like they might not have the resources. Like I said, broken stoves and broken this. Like they're
Also-
in slumlord situations, a lot of them. So give them the access to hot prepared foods.
Also, really quick, there's like also like illegal apartments, quote unquote, where like you just don't even have a fucking kitchen
Right.
because
Yeah,
you're in
man.
somebody's attic or some shit like that.
Right.
Like, and that's where you can get cheaper living.
Yeah.
Is if you rent like an illegal apartment where you're doing like cash every month or whatever because it's the cheapest way for you to
Yeah.
live. So what if you can't even fucking cook the shit that you have?
Exactly. You're a single mom and you have 3 kids and you need to feed them a hot dinner and you live in one of these illegal apartments.
Yes. You don't even have a fucking stove.
That 8-piece chicken
Yeah.
that we made is going to feed your kids. Why is that not in the food stamp?
Right.
Like, why is that against the food stamp rules?
That doesn't make sense to me.
And,
They're making up
chicken
fucking rules
is
for-
luxury?
Right.
My whole
like-
thing is like, why does anybody think they can, like, food is food?
Facts.
So like,
Yeah.
why am I going to say like, oh, because you're on food stamps, you only get to eat this quality of food?
That's
because
fucked,
you're
yeah.
poor and you need public welfare
Right.
benefits. You don't deserve to eat as good as someone who worked for their money to afford it. Fuck that.
I'll step
Yeah,
it up
it's
one
fucked.
another step on this topic because this enrages me. Like, forget about the food, just the fact that we think that poor people can't have any luxury at all.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's
like
fucked.
a lot of the old coworkers that I would have, they'd be like, she's up in here with food stamps, but look, her nails are all done, her hair's
Oh,
so
the worst.
so who fucking cares?
Come on,
Do they not
motherfucker.
deserve to feel good about themselves?
A bottle of nail polish is $7. Come on.
Even so, you can be on food stamps and have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not based on if you have a job or not. So if she has a job, maybe it's commission based, and she got a little bit of extra money this week, and she's like, I want to do my nails, I want to do my hair this week. Why?
Also, you can be gifted things too. Like somebody could like gift you a fucking
Facts.
flat iron.
Yeah,
like, come on.
You have no idea. Maybe
And
someone
why is it my business?
literally.
Why are you fucking thinking about that
Literally,
shit? What is
like-
it affecting you?
Like, why are you because you're basically saying, oh, they're poor, so they should look
poor.
poor because that's
Yes.
what we have programmed into people's heads is that if you look poor, you look raggedy and you look dirty and you look this and that.
Yeah.
And when you come in looking, well put together, maybe they had a job interview that day because they're trying to improve their lives.
Right.
But here's also the biggest thing, like, as a collective, nobody's making that much fucking money in this country right now.
And that's what I was saying before.
One step away from fucking food stamps
Correct.
in one way or another. If I popped out one kid right now, I would be eligible for food stamps.
And that's what I'm
I
saying.
have a degree.
They're pinning us against each other because we're only a half a step or a step away from being in their position.
Right.
And we're lucky to be there. And and they're turning our attention away from the real problem, which is the people who are literally putting us in this situation.
Wow.
Let's all get angry at the poor when we are basically also the poor, just not as poor.
And that's part of why, like, I feel so passionate about, like, some of the things that I do, like, with my clients, because it's like, not only am I fighting for y'all because y'all are the poor, bitch, I am the poor. Like, I can identify also with all of my clients, like, that face barriers to medical care and quality food and quality housing. Like, I can easily face all of those barriers as well because I'm in the same social class. I'm just as poor.
I was just going to ask you something that I feel like might be like slightly controversial for you. Do you feel like you guys are making enough money? Because I don't.
Brother,
Yep.
No, I do the Lord's work.
No, I've said this for the longest time. Like, the problem is, right, like, every industry has the person that makes too much or at least there are people not making enough, right? So, like, medical field. Doctors are making
all the money.
All the money.
Yeah.
But, like, what about, like, all the techs and
nurses.
the nurses, and at least nurses are a little bit better off.
Work.
And they do all the actual work, and the only benefit they have is like they're always going to have a job because you always need nurses.
Yeah, but they're also like, always over fucking work too.
But even within nurses, you have like LPNs who aren't full BSN nurses, so they're getting paid at a lower rate. And then within education, right, principals make all the money. But teachers are paid garbage. They're literally
the teachers are the ones that are fucking teaching.
They're educating your kid, and by the way, also keeping them in one place for 7 hours while you're at work.
Also, what the fuck is the principal doing in comparison? Like
discipline.
They're a politician basically for the like that they represent the school to like the to like the board or whatever. Everybody, it's such a backwards system, and social workers are the same thing, right? Like caseworkers make the least, but they're the ones who are knee deep in the shit.
I mean, I've probably got 6 or 7 clients on my caseload right now that make more money than I do.
Like, what are we doing?
And I'm helping to get them funding to pay their rent.
Did we not just hear her tell a story about saving a family?
Yeah.
Like, there's teachers that teachers make more money than we do. Like, we do not make enough money. I mean, for what we do, like, I should be able to charge, like, because I'm in people's houses talking to them every fucking day.
They're also blowing your phone up when you're fucking home.
Right. It's not like I'm just in there like, oh, here's a resource, you should call them. Like,
here's a pamphlet.
I'm talking to you about what's going on in your life. Like, it's basically like a whole therapy session. Like, therapists get to charge fee for service, get to charge insurance. Yeah. Why can't I charge insurance for what I do every time I do a home visit? I should be able to bill that.
And the thing is that we don't want to make, and at least I don't want to speak for everybody, but like, I don't want to make it sound like I'm bitter. I'm not saying if you're a doctor or lawyer, like, you shouldn't make money. It's just these people should also, like, it's never like
should also be making
the
money.
big problem of society, right? Is we always do like, oh, like it's this or it's this. No, like doctors, lawyers, go make your money. Can we also just pay the teachers in the social work?
Right.
Can it just be right?
Included?
Yeah. Can it just be right? You know what I mean?
And like, also, why is it that you can go to school and get a finance degree or a marketing degree, and then you can go work in selling fucking Ozempic for a pharmaceutical company and make 6 figures?
Right. And in your field specifically, you can't even become like a full-on certified social worker without a master's degree.
Exactly.
A master's degree to make $55,000 a year?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, most people go to grad school because they're trying to really get into the next tax bracket.
Right.
Not in today's society.
And originally I was like, okay, I'm never going to make any money until I get a master's degree. But now it's like, all right, I'm going to get a master's degree. I still ain't going to make any money.
And that's crazy. That's crazy because wild. Unlike, people, like most people, I made a joke before that, like, my job's going to pay for my master's, but most places don't. Like, so that means so not only are you the working poor, now you're investing in an education that is going to make you more poor, and then when you get the job that you want, you're still going to be poor. Like, there's no reprieve. Like, it's one thing, right? Like, the novelty of like the side hustle, say like when our parents were young or our grandparents, you got a side hustle because you could actually take your side hustle money and literally save it, right?
Yeah.
Now people have a side hustle, and when their bills come up every month, they're using their second income to pay for a portion of their bills.
Right.
They're not saving anything. They have 2 and 3 jobs and they're still just making it. Like, I'm all about like, if I want a second, like I want things to be at a place where like it's affordable and you want a second job because you have the work ethic and you want to save some extra money, go for it. But we're literally in a place now where it's almost like a necessity to have multiple streams of income.
It is.
And we're like making people like monetize their hobbies, which is like, it just brings in this whole culture of like everything has to be profitable or it's a waste of time. And I just think that gives people no sense of worth within their lives, which is sad. Like, we should just be able to like things and not be like, I'm really good at like sewing. I should open an Etsy store to make a second stream. Like, or you could just have fun doing it.
Right.
And the people aren't the problem because they're just trying to survive. It's the system that I feel bad is making them think that they always have to profit on everything that they're good at.
Mm-hmm. Can you walk us through what a regular day for you looks like as a social worker?
I have 15 cases right now.
Okay.
And each case, so one case is one family.
Okay.
So it's not like each case means one kid. I could have a family that have 8 kids.
Oh, shit.
And that's still one case. And I have to see each of those kids once a month.
What's an average amount of cases to have, I guess?
Our maximum capacity is 15.
Holy shit, so you're maxed out.
I'm maxed out. I've been maxed out since I started.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's going to pretty much always be that way.
It'll always be that way. Yeah. Okay. As soon as I get rid of a case, I get a new one. The way we get our reports is the child abuse hotline that sends their reports down to Philadelphia County's DHS office. Okay. So anything that is screened out as basically not meeting the threshold of neglect or abuse, and maybe the family just needs some resources to have their needs met, they get sent to prevention providers like my agency. Okay. So I want to say there's 5 or 6 other providers that provide family empowerment services, which is my program. Okay. And we receive 88% of the reports that come into the child abuse hotline.
Holy shit.
88% of them.
Why is that?
So only 12% of the reports that are getting called in meet that threshold of abuse or neglect to be investigated. Wow. The rest of them are families that are just really need some help.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's where we come in. But the amount of cases we get is crazy because it's just everything that's screened out comes to us.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like statistical proof that like we always want to throw worst case scenario, like neglect. These kids are being abused, and like come to find out, really, they just need some resources.
Yeah,
like they just need a couple things, and they'll be in much better shape than they were last week.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the majority of my case plans, because I come up with goals. We do case planning at each of our visits, where we sit down, we say, all right, like what are some things that you want to work on in the 90 days that we have together? And a lot of the times it's basic needs. Like I need clothing for my kids. I need a source of ongoing food because my food stamps don't cover it. So it's like connecting you to a food bank that has weekly pickups that you can get on a list for.
So there's like a 90-day limitation for each case?
For my services, yeah, we're a short-term program. Okay. So we're only in home with the family for 90 days. And we do visits every 15 days. So I'm out every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it's more of an intensive frequency, but it's for a shorter duration of time.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm assuming that with each case that you have, you just stagger it by the days so you can make it to each place.
Oh yeah, my calendar looks off the wall.
That's wild.
And it's crazy because the amount of times that people will most of my days are literally just coordinating my schedule because of people canceling or being late or not being able to show up for a visit and reworking my schedule 8 times a day because shit happens. People have kids. People have transportation to get home on time. Shit happens. I have to be flexible.
If it's okay, I actually had a question as well. Yeah. So kind of transitioning back to what you were originally doing. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about what you do, but what I've noticed in the work that I've done and the work that other people do, social workers end up wearing a lot of hats. And you kind of mentioned it before. You're their school counselor. You get your mom, your dad. You play all these roles in people's lives. So for people who are in professions where you might get a call from a social worker, I work for a university in admissions, right? And I've been working in Camden for the past 6 years. So any high school senior that's applying to my university from Camden, I'm their contact.
Okay.
A lot of the times, and my coworkers do too, because there's other parts of New Jersey, that students are represented by social workers. What would you say people should practice when they get a call from a social worker on behalf of a child, in terms of like patience and things like that? Because I know, like, when I first started, I was like, they can't just pick up the phone themselves. And then I learned and I realized, like, no, they can't, because they have no idea what they're doing. So to professionals out there that are directly, in contact with social workers, what advice would you give them to like try and be better in those situations?
To think outside of what you think of a stereotypical social worker, because we are not all that. We don't all just push paper and try to get through our day doing as little as possible. We're not just like stuffy, like,
right.
I feel like people think of like a stuffy old lady that is coming in to point the finger and say, you're bad, you're this, you're doing that.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
think of a social worker as someone that is just trying to coordinate the best services as possible. Like, just trying to lend a helping hand and make the process a little bit easier, and to also advocate. Like, I think people should know, like, if you're talking to a social worker, that social worker is going to advocate for their client first and foremost.
Right. And they also, though, in terms of like, right, they're contacting, say, me, they don't have an expertise in what I do.
Right.
They're literally doing this because they just know that this person that they're working with needs the help. So be understanding in that way too, right?
Absolutely. Because I think that's actually a really, really good point, because a lot of my times when I'm thinking about resources to give a family, it's just me and my computer. And
You're Googling. Yeah.
I'm just Googling, like, what kind of resource is going to meet their needs. So if I call you and say, hey, I'm a social worker from X, Y, and Z. I'm trying to get my client connected to your services. Can you tell me a little bit about the process?
And then they roll their eyes right away, right? Like, because an example that I always have is like, I work with students applying to college, and it'll be April. Like, they should have been applied months ago. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people in my industry will go, why weren't you on this? Like, because you just inherited this kid like 3 weeks ago, and all he said is that he wants to apply to school, and you're trying to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think one of the things that I've noticed is, like, sometimes when a client is having a problem, say like with getting a kid enrolled in school, or getting a kid mental health services, or getting a kid's IEP to be adhered to,
right?
Once that social worker steps in and makes that call, the other professionals usually get in line.
Mm-hmm.
Once I make a phone call and say, yo, I'm working with this client. She's telling me that she's having X, Y, and Z issues, and that you guys aren't doing X, Y, and Z. What the hell is going on here? No, I'm not saying it like that, but like, what are the barriers to this?
You don't even have to, though.
Let me put some pressure on you.
Yeah,
like,
because your position carries the weight to not even have to be that aggressive.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. It's like I recognize that a lot of systems that surround my clients also have a lot of pitfalls, and also have a lot of kinks in their system where things don't always go as smoothly. So like, I'm trying to find out the process, but I'm also trying to make sure that my clients are represented and get the best things that they can possibly get. And if that means me stepping on your neck a little bit because you're not holding up your end of the bargain and getting on the phone and saying, yo, you told me that you were going to hook my client up with access to X, Y, and Z. Where's the referral?
Right.
Usually that gets them moving a little bit quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially with like doctor's appointments, like in the city, and a lot of doctor's appointments, like if you miss 3 appointments, they will not schedule you any further. Yeah. They'll drop you. And some parents that have multiple children, it's hard to get your kids to the doctor. I mean, imagine packing up 3 little ones and putting them on SEPTA.
Yeah, that right, exactly.
In the dead of heat or the middle of winter. That sounds fucking miserable.
On public transportation.
Yeah, and you need to take 3 buses and the subway to get there.
And you have to hope that they all make it there on time.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're 15 minutes late, they're going to cancel your appointment.
And charge you a fee.
Exactly. And you just got all the way there, paid that money for the bus fare for nothing. So people miss their appointments or reschedule, and then they're not able to schedule anymore. If I call and say, yo, I'm a social worker, I need this kid to be seen, and I will ensure that they get there, then there will be a little bit more leeway. Like, if I get on the phone, I can usually make something happen. But I think that's because people hear social worker and think, okay, now the person that might have been giving me, like, because people always have clients that they find hard to work with. And if someone, say, like a mental health provider or a parenting provider is having a problem with a certain client and they're hard to work with, they're hard to access, but now you know that they have a social worker, you can connect with the social worker and things can go a little bit smoother, and you can say, all right, well, they have someone that they're working with now. It's not like me that has to deal with them. Someone that knows what the deal is, knows what the program is. I can work with them instead of working with this maybe hard to work with client.
And that's the positive version of it. I think also on, unfortunately, the more negative side too, like say that your client was trying to make this call themselves for 4 weeks, but but people have implicit bias, you know, oh, like I can just talk however I want to this kid or this mom because they're poor and they're not going to do anything. You step in, now they're like, oh, shit, now I got to like do my job.
It's fucking real.
You know, so like, on the other end, like, and we would hope that most people would turn to the other end, right? Where they go, oh, great, this is great. They have a social worker. We can get this figured out. But unfortunately, with implicit bias, a lot of the times people in different, you know, professions will take advantage of the less, you know, the less advantaged.
Absolutely. And the people that have less resources, they think like,
and just knowledge of the situation.
To dismiss you.
Yeah. Because you don't know. Like, you don't know the rules, and they know you don't know the rules.
Right. So
and then you bring in somebody who knows the rules. They're like, oh, now I got to follow the rules.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's like huge though. Like, so many parents don't know like the rules, like their rights as a parent, like what the laws are in the state they live in regarding their kids' education. Like, and if you don't know what you don't know, like, you know, I have some parents that are like, I didn't know I had to take my kids to the dentist when they turned a certain age. Yeah, now your kid's 8 and has a mouthful of cavities, but you didn't know what you didn't know. But like, or I didn't know that my kid couldn't miss more than 3 days of school, but I had trouble getting him to school, and I don't feel comfortable with my kid taking public transportation alone.
Right, like that parent you said was relocated from a different state.
Yeah.
Right? So because I looked at New Jersey, and it's a lot more lenient in terms of missed days. So they move here, and they don't know, and they're not well educated and this and that. They think, oh, well, I have 15 days. Yeah. You know, we can make this work. And 3, and now someone's knocking on your door.
No, somebody's calling you.
Exactly.
Wow. Do you feel a disconnect between you and other people because of the work that you do?
Absolutely.
Okay. Like, in what way? Why do you think you feel like that?
I think when it comes to like social situations, like some people, I feel like other people can talk about their job in like a lackadaisical, like, oh, this is what I do for work. Like, I have these friends from work.
Bring up
and, like,
a fucking dinner conversation.
Yeah. I can't just bring this up like in my regular life. Like, it's funny, like, because I talk Alex's ear off about work all the time, and sometimes he's like, yo, Case, like, this is really fucking heavy. Like, I can't hear all of this all of the time. It's doom and gloom.
And you're like, whoopsie.
I'm like, sorry. Like, but like, I have a good like foundation of friends that are social work friends that like, they understand the shit. Like,
it's probably
being in the shit of it where it's easier to like have that conversation. But like, I feel like it's such a big part of my identity that like I like to talk about it, but I don't like to bring it up in conversation because I don't like people to think of me of like, oh, you're a social worker, like you have this authority, like, and I also see like situations so differently because of what I've seen. Like, I think like one of the big things that I talk about all the time is like parenting now, like how parents bring their kids to like breweries and wineries and like are okay with like being in social situations, drinking with their kids. Like, I don't fly with that shit. Like, I think that's totally not safe. I think that's totally not cool. And like, I low-key judge you as a parent. Like, if you're doing that shit and posting it online. So like, I feel like it gives me a disconnect because like I'm at the age where like, so many of my friends like are having kids and doing that shit. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to fucking judge you. But like, this isn't cool, dude. Like, you want your kid to grow up knowing you with a drink? Like,
yeah.
Or like, you about to drive home and I know both of y'all are drinking. Like, and it's just like, I think I look at parenting and differently because I have seen a lot of shitty parents.
Does that make you nervous for if you decide to have children?
I don't want kids.
You don't want
because
kids?
of that.
Okay, gotcha.
No. No, I couldn't. I've seen so much ugly, and I think that me personally, I'm afraid that, like, I know that everyone fucks their kid up in some way or another.
Do you think that's the reason that you don't want kids is because you work with kids and you had such a, like, hard life as a child?
I think I would fuck my kid up. I think I would cause trauma, and I don't want a kid to, like, I don't want that. No, I don't want to put someone through that.
That hurts my soul.
Yeah.
Because I feel like actually people like you are the ones who should be having kids.
Yeah. I mean,
unfortunately, but I understand your fears.
I've seen all of the ways that people can mess their kids up.
Yeah.
And, like, I don't want to do that to a kid. And I know
don't think
that,
you
like,
would, though, because you're so hyper aware of it.
but
Not convincing you to have
everyone
kids.
fucks their kid up. Like, you don't,
Yeah,
when
no
I
matter
tell
what.
you that everyone fucks their kid up in some way or another, that's the truth. Like,
even
no
if you're a
matter
kid that,
what.
like, comes from a very clean household that
Right.
has a lot of money, like, you
could not want or
Sometimes
need
those
for
are, those,
anything in
sometimes
life.
those are even worse.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's too much resources in a way.
I think, and it's also like seeing some of the shit that I've seen, like it almost makes me question like my experiences and my trauma. I'm like, damn, is what I went through even really that bad?
Oh,
Like,
God, don't do that shit. Ryan will correct you right now.
Like, I think that all the time. Like, I see some of these cases and I'm like, I really should not even be traumatized.
No,
like,
girl.
But then I have to snap myself out of that and be like, yo, everyone's hell is different.
It's valid.
Like,
Everyone
Yes,
is
it
valid.
is.
Everyone's feelings are valid for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, and that kind of also, you talked about some of like the treatment you went through and things like that. Like, as someone who basically works adjacently to the mental health industry, like, are you in therapy right now?
fuck yeah, I'm in therapy.
Good for
and
you.
I
Hell
advocate
yeah.
for, I think every single person should have a therapist.
Yeah.
I think
Room full of therapy kids, by the way.
I
All of
think
us.
it should be part of like the checkup system, right? Like you get your eyes checked every 6 months. You get,
Ooh.
you go to like, and maybe it doesn't have to be as like, maybe not every year, but maybe every other year, every 3 years.
No,
like
every
you
year.
should like, or I mean, I'm down for every year, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you should
Should be mandatory, though.
like something
Once every 3 years.
like some
at least.
psychiatric evaluation. Like,
I
how
mean,
are you
they
doing?
ask you at every doctor's appointment, do you smoke? Do you consume any drugs? Like,
But that's it.
that's it. But like, I think to take it a step further, I think that they should do a major depressive disorder screening at every single
I
well
agree.
visit.
I agree. Not just
it's an
asking.
11 question. It's 11 questions.
Yeah, not just asking.
11,
Do you
that's
want
it?
to?
I'm pretty sure it's literally 11 questions.
Get the fuck out of here, because some of the assessments that I've been doing recently, like, they've gone up to like 88
Oh
questions.
no,
Well, yeah.
they get crazy. But
Yeah,
like,
I'm sure.
There's general
there's, like-
screeners where
Yeah.
it's like
Correct.
a brief like
To start the process.
just
Exactly.
start the process.
Right.
Here is an indication of maybe you should talk to somebody else, or maybe you shouldn't. Like,
Yeah.
just an indication, like a baseline of how you are. How are you
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah, instead
Like,
of haphazardly just looking down at a thing going, do you want to harm yourself or anyone else?
Right.
but like
No,
actually
right.
having a conversation
Right.
with somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like,
for anybody that's never done an assessment in their entire life, I'm very new to assessments, and like my therapist and I have been going through it. We've been doing assessments for fucking weeks. Like, I can't even tell you how many assessments I've taken, and we're just trying to dive into it and figure all this shit out for myself, because now as an adult, I'm like, oh, am I kind of fucked up? Like, is there something that I should
Right.
know that I didn't know before? But
You ain't fucked up. You just don't have the answers yet.
damn right. No, but what happens basically when you take an assessment is like there's a list of questions and you can answer it with
Yeah.
like yes, true now, or true when I was a kid, or
Right.
never, or whatever. And like basically you end up on a score. And once you score, they kind of determine like where you land in your score in comparison to other people. You know what I
right.
mean? And that might have a certain like mental health kind of whatever it is diagnosis that maybe you should move into further assessment, or if you're on the totally low
Right.
end, you don't have shit to worry about and you can go on your merry fucking way.
Right. And I mean, it's the
How
same
freeing
thing.
is that?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same thing with alcohol and drugs. We ask, I mean, it's standard screening to ask, I want to say the question is like, have you consumed like 7 more than X, Y, and Z alcoholic beverages in the past 7
Yep.
days? If yes, that warrants further assessment. They ask the question, have you consumed or engaged in any illicit drug behavior in the past 2 weeks? If you answer yes, that warrants a further assessment. Like, doctors should be asking those questions routinely.
Damn right.
Yeah, just do the same thing for mental health.
Yeah.
The same thing for mental health. A general anxiety, a general depression screening may suggest that you need a further assessment. We're not saying that you need treatment, but maybe we need to talk about this a little deeper.
Yeah.
Because if you just glance over it, I mean, you're at your well visit, your mental health is a part of your wellness.
Yes.
Like, we should be checking in on that. Like, and I think about, like, we ask mothers, like, new mothers, we ask them at the newborn visits, like the baby gets seen 1 day old, 1 week old, 1 month old, like, but they follow up about postpartum depression with the mom at every single one of those child visits. So why are we not following up with depression in general in every adult visit? Like, that should just be standard.
You know what? Actually, something that you just mentioned, that they follow up with moms with postpartum depression, actually leads into a question that one of our followers asked us earlier today.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So somebody said, I asked them basically if they would have any questions for a social worker and what would they want to talk about or what would they want to hear in a conversation. And somebody said they want options for men. A lot of the times it's harder for single dads to get the help that they need. And my question, based off of their question, is why do you think that there's a lack of masculinity in the field? Because I think when we think of social workers, we don't immediately think of a man.
No.
Which is wild, because in so many other aspects in life, we immediately think of men in that kind of position.
I think, like, just the way that gender roles have shaped over time has a lot to do with that. Like, you see women going into helping professions like nursing, like social work. You see men going into helping professions like police work, like firefighting, like the military. I think it's very, like, genderized. I would say that's not even a word, but, like,
It is now.
I think that, like, definitely puts, like, a disparity in the amount of men that are in this field. But I think for men to access services, like, oftentimes when we think of parenting, your immediate thought is you're dealing with the mom.
Yeah, because you only think of single moms. You don't think of single dads.
You think of single moms, and I've got single dads on my caseload right now, and they're, I mean, my agency right now, we do men's coffee talks where it's like a men's support group.
What? Shut
Yeah,
the
like
fuck
a
up.
men's
That's
mental
cool.
health group we do.
that.
There's actually a lot of parenting groups that are geared towards dad that are, like, coming out.
Okay, good. Good for them.
But what I always recommend is, like, for dads that want, like, resources on parenting is, like, there's a lot of support groups that, like, anyone can go to, and they're virtual. And I think being virtual takes a lot of, like, the anxiety out of it, of, like, damn, I'm just going to go sit in a room full of women that are going to talk to me about parenting and their kids. Like, if it's virtual, it may take off some of that pressure. But,
Just like therapy, same thing. I think that, like, virtual therapy is, like, a
I
lot
think virtual
easier for some
therapy is
people.
so much
That's
easier.
awesome.
Yeah, it is.
But I think that with agencies need to put more of an emphasis on men's services specifically for men. I think that traditionally in social services that everything is geared towards women.
Right.
So I think that a space needs to be carved out intentionally for men.
yeah, I feel like it's not normalized
And
enough
it's not
either.
normalized enough. I think like, if there were more, like, men's mental health groups, like, that would be awesome. But I mean, I know when I call community behavioral health, which is, like, they connect us to all, like, the different therapy resources in the city. There's so many men that work for them. And, like, there's some programs now that are, like, virtual programs that are specifically for men.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I feel like, what if if a single dad felt like he needed help or he needed a social worker for some reason, is there any way for him to be able to get that kind of help, or somebody needs to call in for him? Like, how does that work?
So agencies like mine, Family Empowerment Services, we take walk-in referrals all the time. A lot of clients just walk in and self-refer. Yeah.
Do they need to live in the state of Pennsylvania for that?
They need to live in the city of Philadelphia and have a child in their custody.
Okay.
So that's the caveat, is that our services are for children and their parents in the home. So we provide services to that parent and the child in that home. If that child lives out of that home, we would be providing services to that parent wherever the kid lives.
But I feel like in other states they probably have stuff like that. They just need to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, dads, dads are never excluded from services just because they're a dad. I mean, there's certain organizations like the Maternity Care Coalition where, I don't think they would support dads because it's for teen moms.
Yeah. Right.
But I think like, there's teen dads that need to learn how to be parents too. And I think it's not inclusive at all for fathers. And I think it's more of a scary thing for a dad to ask for help.
It's scary for men to ask for help in general.
And being a single dad, like I met with a single dad yesterday and we were going through resources and I was like, hey, like, what do you think about all this? And he was like, Miss Casey, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. Like, I've never been in a position where I've needed to get these things for my daughter. I only have one kid. This is the first time I'm doing this. And I've never had to even do these things in my own life. Like, these aren't things that I needed that anyone ever did with me. So, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. So that's why I'm saying I don't know. Like, and it's like, okay, well, like, and he said, like, let's just do one thing at a time. I was like, cool. Wow. Like, we'll take it one thing at a time and we'll get everything taken care of. But like, just because you're a dad doesn't mean that you aren't eligible for services. I mean, most programs, except like with the exception of like the Mommy and Me programs.
Sure.
Like, any dad would be eligible for it.
Wow.
I'm seeing a lot more dads participate in our services, though.
Good.
Like, I have some clients right now where it's not like a 2-parent household, but dad lives in the neighborhood, is very like present in the kids' lives, and both parents like do the visits together. And I always give credit where credit's due because like I think that's fabulous. Like, seeing good co-parenting relationships.
I read something, and I don't want to like quote it exactly, but I read something recently where it said like fatherly like participation. I don't know how they got that metric, but like in their kids' lives, regardless of parent divorce or not, is like up amongst like Gen X dads and like older millennial dads. Like dads are more involved, and I think the polls that are like, you know, like mom and dad splitting the responsibilities in the house, it's also more close to 50-50 now.
Absolutely. Because I'll think about the times that we're in now, though. Like, it's not realistic for a woman to just be simply at home doing all that, because most people need a 2-income household now. So like, it needs to be split 50-50.
Which means also parental responsibility has to be 50-50.
Parental responsibility has to be distributed as well because both parents are working.
Yeah.
Cool.
You would hope.
You know, you mentioned your partner Alex earlier, and that he mentions to you sometimes that like some of the stuff that you're talking about is like a little bit too heavy for him, or like it's just a lot to take on at one time. How do you feel like you protect yourself from the heaviness and like the emotional suffocation that it kind of takes from your job?
I watch a lot of I just like disappear myself into like a show, like my comfort shows. Like, I bury myself in that. And I watch mindless videos on YouTube a lot. Like, I'm really like, I'll just put on like beauty videos. Like, I'll watch people like unpackage like makeup that they bought for like an hour on YouTube and like that, like
something to disconnect.
I just need to literally just turn it off. Like, it never really disconnects, but like you can quiet it down.
Do you feel like it's just like a form of dissociation in a way?
Absolutely.
Have you talked to your therapist about that?
No.
Not yet.
She said, no, girl, I know it's not healthy.
No, I need to fucking have like better ways of like, I mean, I've been reading. So this summer I made it a goal to read as a way to like take care of myself and like disconnect from it. And that's been helpful. Okay. Unfortunately, like the genre that I read is also like really fucked up things happening. So like murder mysteries.
Oh, those are my favorite.
She's like, guys, I'm trying, okay?
Yeah, I mean, I really do try my best, and then I go home and watch SVU.
No, but it's so like realistically, it's so important for you to take care of yourself because you are taking care of other people all day. And like I said earlier, like you're literally a superhero to so many people, you know, because you're helping people and you're saving lives. And like, I think that that's something that really gets overlooked in your line of work, unfortunately. And I feel like it's just, I don't know, I just feel like people don't think about that often enough. But it's really important for you to take care of yourself so you can continue to do it and not get burnt out like you felt like you did the first time. Well, I'm sure you probably feel like now what you're doing it's a lot easier for you to stay motivated.
Absolutely. It's a lot easier to stay on track. It's a lot harder to fall into a spiral of like having shit unorganized. I'm able to stay organized better. And also I'm medicated now, which is like a huge help, like in being able to compartmentalize, like this is my personal life. This is my work life. And also like I talk to my mom and dad every single day.
Good
and
for
like
you.
talking to them and like, especially my dad knowing that like, he was a cop for 35 years and like he's seen the ugliness of the world and like I know like I can call him and he'll talk me like out of my spiral of sadness about work.
That's
but like
awesome.
my parents definitely like if I talk to them every day, I'm pretty grounded.
Good. I know you mentioned earlier that you said that you feel like you have people pleasing tendencies. Do you feel like you also kind of get like a little bit of like a hero complex where you feel like you have to
Sometimes
be helping people all the time?
Sometimes. I feel like sometimes people know that I'm a social worker, so they generally gravitate towards me for help.
Oh, that's hard. Because then how do you like set that boundary and like be like,
It's
hey,
hard. Like they look at me as like a social worker, so they all kind of come to me and dump all their stuff.
Oh, that's so hard.
And like I have to
That's
say
like
like,
being a
yo, like I
therapist.
can't hear this.
Yeah.
I can't hear it. Don't talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Like, because I'll get sucked into it. Like I have the mentality of like, if you start talking to me about your problems, I'm gonna buy into it.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm gonna listen, and then I'm gonna give you advice, and now we're gonna be social working.
Yeah, and you're
like,
gonna be checking in on them and shit. Like,
exactly. And I don't like feeling like I'm social working the people that I love in my life.
I feel like therapists probably have the same issue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And my therapist doesn't like to admit that shit, but I know she does.
Yeah.
Like, because my therapist, she like doesn't self-disclose a lot, but like there's times where I talk about work and I'm like, I know you want to relate to this so hard right now. Like,
I'm sure.
Yeah, your fields are so like adjacent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything that scares you about your job? Or if there was one thing that scared you about your job? what would it be?
It's the unpredictability of it that can be intimidating sometimes. Like, I'm cool knocking on doors, going into houses, people being upset with me. Like, I understand, like, people see a social worker and my people aren't always going to be happy when I'm knocking on their door.
Of course
So
not,
that
yeah.
can sometimes be a little bit intimidating of, like, what is waiting for me on the other side of this door. I've had clients like pull guns on me, like knocking on their door.
No way.
Yeah, it happened recently, actually. And that was pretty scary. I called my dad in tears afterwards because it was the first time that had happened at work. And I was like, he's like, yeah, Case, what you do is more dangerous than the cops. At least I had a gun. I was like, you're not wrong, brother. But like, yeah, so that part gets a little scary because like shit can turn on a dime. Like, and
It's so fucked. You're literally just trying to do your job.
Yeah, like,
and
I'm
like you're
just-
there to help people. Like, oh my
most
God,
of the time people aren't angry at me, people aren't aggressive towards me, but
Right.
there are certain things that I need to talk about in visits that can get uncomfortable and can make people defensive. And sometimes people have so much trauma going on that like it all comes out as unstableness. And like the
and
way
you're the
that
messenger, so they're just taking it out on you.
right, like the way that like unstableness can turn very quickly makes me a little hesitant sometimes.
Holy shit.
Now, with a lot of what's going on right now in the world, there's been a lot of conversation about like the role that social workers can play in law enforcement. How do you feel about that? Because I feel like it's a two-sided coin where I think a lot of people think it would be good to have these people in these situations for de-escalation. But also, though, at least in the current format, you're not completely trained to be in the same positions as a police officer, say.
I think it puts a lot of social workers in danger. I think the basis of the idea is great. Bucks County has a lot of their police departments have a co-responder now that is a social worker that goes out with them.
Right.
Oh, shit. Okay.
The caveat to that is that the police department is the one who decides what calls are okay to go out on and what calls are not.
Right.
So it's still kind of at the discretion of the police, which is, I think, a downfall because, like, the whole thing we're saying is that the police don't have the discretion and the awareness and the training or discernment to handle these situations.
But they know when to bring
But
in
they
the
know
professional.
when to bring in the
Yeah.
social worker.
Yeah.
But I don't I also think it's a sticky situation because with 911 calls, like you can call in and it can be a domestic and a co-responder can come out, but that shit can get violent really fast.
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, I think it's a fine line of, do you want them to be safe? But if you give them the power to protect themselves, then do the lines become blurred and they become closely associated with the police?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I think having social workers working hand in hand with the police may make that association stronger and might make people more ambivalent to work with social workers because they're like, oh, you're with the feds.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean?
It's tough. Yeah. And
I feel like they can't even just have like a cop like on the other side of the street. Just in case to like protect you guys, like they can't do something like that.
I mean, I can always call the cops if I need to, like if I'm truly in danger. But I've noticed that
but then they take time to get there.
Right.
With this specific situation, though, it's in like the premise is situations of crisis. Like it's after we already know something. Is what I'm kind of referencing because there's been a lot of discussion about we should just have them there from the jump.
Yeah.
Instead of waiting for the
when
things have already gotten bad.
Right.
But the way I perceived what you were saying was like, oh, we're gonna have the social worker knock on the door. But the thing is that 911's already been called at this point, and we're deciding should social workers be involved now when the situation is already more volatile.
And I think at that point, once the police are involved, it's already escalated.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, police presence when social workers are needed is only going to escalate something. Like, I've never been in a situation where, like, I've had to call the police and things didn't escalate afterwards.
Right. It's just at that point, like you said it earlier in your story, you're like, oh, police are called. Now it's going to get crazy.
Right. It's always going to get worse when I've always noticed it always gets worse when I call the cops.
And that's not necessarily because they've actually even done anything. It's a lot of people, especially in lower income areas, just get nervous when police are around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. So I would be nervous if a cop was here.
Right. Like, so it's not even like blaming anyone in particular. It's just that the system is broken.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like a general social worker, like, or a crisis worker going out is a lot less intimidating. And I think that honestly, social workers, as far as like what they're trained in, like de-escalation, like there are some situations I can handle it better than a cop can. Like,
right.
Because cops are going to go into it. They're going to start motherfucking you and cursing you up a wall and making judgments and like calling you crazy. Like my dad, love him to death, but like he is a very, like he was a cop that, and all the cops use the word for anyone with mental health. They were called the crazies. Yeah. So like you have people coming into this situation and that's what they think.
I think also,
and then you bring a social worker into that, and that doesn't take away.
Yeah, these people
asshole that's here treating you like an asshole.
But the cops, though, they just are quite literally just not trained for this moment.
No.
Well, I was also going to say, like, I think that immediately when you think of cops, you think of somebody putting you in your place. You don't think of them trying to help you.
Right.
They're putting you in your place. Yeah, they're trying to, correct you and put you where you're supposed to be at.
So if Casey shows up, it's going to feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Than essentially if your dad showed up. Like,
Right.
Damn. That kind of leads us into another question that somebody else had. There was another follow-up of ours. It's kind of vague. They said, how do you keep your cool? Because I think I'd lose my mind doing that job.
Yo, it's fucking crazy because there's some situations where I'm like, yo, you've got me all the way fucked up. Like, you've got me fucked up if you think I'm going to let you sit here and talk to me like that. But I really have to keep my cool. Like, it really, like, there's some times where I'm like, we're going to need to reschedule this for a different point in time.
Oh,
like,
man.
I'm going to come back. I'm going to walk out now.
Yeah.
Because, like, and it takes a lot. I've also think it's just from the dynamic of, like, my family. I have very thick skin. So, like, I can handle you, like, talk your shit. Like, I'm still going to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm past the point of getting scared out of home visits. Like, but what you're not going to do is you got one time to talk to me sideways and then I'm walking out. Like,
we'll try this again.
Yeah. We'll try again tomorrow.
We'll try this again tomorrow.
Yeah. And I'll be nice about it. Like, respectfully, I'm going to have to end this phone call. Like, because you're not going to motherfuck me up and down.
Yeah.
Like,
good. That's a good way of protecting yourself and setting the boundaries like we talked about earlier.
But, like, I'll sit there and I'll entertain it for a while just to see how far some people go. Because, like, my one supervisor, she's like, you're better than me, Casey, because you stay in there a lot longer and you take a lot more shit than you should. And I'm like, I just want to see how far these people will go, and then I can politely correct and redirect the behavior, and
or you can fucking leave.
Yeah, or I can leave. Like,
damn.
honestly, like we can have because you can sit there and yell in my face, and I can keep my same tone of voice and still get done what I need to get done. Okay, you don't like what I have to say, but I still need to say it.
Damn.
And we're still going to talk about it, and I'm still going to come back here in 2 weeks. So,
do you think you're gonna do this forever?
yeah, probably.
Damn, good for you.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Do I want to stay in like the home visiting, like boots on the ground in the streets forever? Fuck no, I will die.
Yeah.
Do I want to get into more of like the larger systems of things? I think that would be cool. Like program managing, like if I could act, what I want to do, my grand theory is that I want to stay in child welfare, but I want to do something with addiction as well.
Okay.
So there's a lot of rehab programs that are like residential programs where moms or parents can go stay with their kids in rehab.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's like a newer model, but it's proven to be really beneficial. So I think like working in that kind of setting would be cool. I think program management would also, like some of the larger macro scale, like moving all the pieces, doing grant writing, getting funding would be cool. And I like policy. So like I think if I could do like any sort of like side work, like, or volunteer work in like the political realm of social policy, that would be cool.
I was gonna say, would you ever consider getting into like local politics?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Hell yeah. Good for you. All right, I have a closing question for you because I feel like we're coming to the end.
Yes.
This has been a fucking sick episode, by the way.
Did you guys like it?
Dude.
Am I cool enough?
I'm
is this interesting?
I'm having a great time.
you
You're
think the
so
people
fucking
like
interesting.
it?
Yes. And also, like, I have a million other questions in my brain, but I'm like, I know we're already at the fucking, like, 2-ish hour mark, and I am not editing shit from this. Aside from me, like, having acid reflux in the microphone. Like, I'm not editing shit. Like, but I was going to say, one of my closing questions would be, I guess, what advice would you have for somebody considering a career in social work? Would you have any advice for someone?
Stay as open-minded as possible because you never truly know what somebody is, like what somebody's story is. Like you can look at somebody at face value and they can blow you away with what they have to say they've been through. And advice, always ask the question, what happened to you, instead of what's wrong with you.
Whoa. I just got the chills, actually.
Man, can I be honest?
literally
That is
did.
like the one thing that I've always been taught is it like always ask not what is wrong, but what happened to you.
That's great life advice. Like, I mean, it's great for social workers, but like, honestly, we should just all be doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
because everyone's behaviors or actions or, you know, points of view on something stemmed from something happening to them that formed that. So like everyone's maladaptive behaviors or something that's of concern, something happened.
yeah, and we're taught to be so accusatory, and I've always said like word choice is so important when you're addressing people, especially if they're in distress or in need. And literally, the two sentences are basically asking the same thing, but one of them is so much more compassionate.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the only other thing, I mean, is I would say like keeping things in perspective that no, you may not be able to change the world. Because I at one point was like, I want to change the world. I want to make my mark in the world. Like, I want to be known as this badass social worker. I can do that in my corner of the world. And if a bunch of social workers did that in their corners of the world
would be
our
changed.
world might look a little bit better.
Okay, so I have another question for you, even though I said that was my closing question. If you could have your dream come true in your world, what would it be?
Oh man,
I know,
That's
it's
such a loaded
big one.
question.
Yeah.
My dream world?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
What would your dream resolution be for your world specifically?
I mean, I just wish money wasn't a problem. Like, I wish that monetary value went away.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we took monetary value away from so many things, that we would be able to live such a more fulfilling life.
fuck capitalism.
We would be able to meet, just the idea that we can meet people's needs without there being strings attached.
Mm-hmm.
like that would be a dream world. Like, would I take a page out of like some European country playbooks? Yeah, I would, because I think they're doing things a little bit better than us as far as like social wise.
Literally go the fuck off. Like,
yeah. Yeah, dude. Holy shit. God damn, I don't want this episode to end. Holy shit. This has been great. Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. I'm so happy to do this.
Fuck, I don't even know how to end this. I don't want it to end.
Honestly, this is the most fun I've had and I don't even think I talk that much, which I feel bad for, but in a way you were just so captivating that I'm glad that you were able to come by and do this. I'm not even joking. Like
You should have heard Ryan and I on the phone earlier today. Like Ryan was like, we really need to just let her have the fucking mic by herself.
Yeah, no, literally. Like, I just think that like you're so clearly in it for the right reasons.
Yes.
And even in fields like this, there are so many people who are not in it for the right reasons. Right. Even in social work, believe it or not, even in social work, there are social workers that walk in to 7-kid single mom homes with a Gucci bag and red bottom heels, and they don't understand what these families are going through. And that's not you. And that's really awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, if you guys ever want me back, we can always do a follow-up.
Fuck yeah. Yeah,
we can always do a follow-up.
Do you have anything that you wish that you would have said, or that you wish that people would hear that you feel like you haven't gotten a chance to say?
I don't think so. Heard? I'm sure I'll go home and like think of something.
You know, be like, Brianna, I'm on my way back.
Yeah, I'm like, can we redo? Let's redo all of it, actually.
What's your schedule this week?
No, I don't think so. I think that was pretty captivating of like everything. I mean, I think like at the end of the day, every social worker, for the most part that I've met, has their why.
Yeah.
And like that why, like you'll never meet a social worker that doesn't have some personal connection to it. Mm-hmm. And like those two things just go hand in hand.
Well, thank you so much for being like so vulnerable and so
transparent. Of course.
Seriously, yeah.
That's why. Wow.
Of course. Listen, I talk to people every day about their problems. I'm an open book. I don't care.
You did say that on the phone.
Yeah, you did say that on the phone. Oh my God. Well, thank you so much for coming on Your Over
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fucking dope.
I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Let's roll that outro music.
Yay.